You're listening to Pitch Perfect, the podcast, not the movie. And I'm your host, Nate, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Josh, but you might know him better from his work as Nicolas Cage's vocal trainer on the set of Willy's Wonderland.
Yes, hello, welcome. I am so proud of that movie. I wrote so many lines for Nick Cage. I haven't seen it yet. It's, I'm sure it's great. I've heard people really enjoy it. But, I just came up with all these, wonderful things that Nick Cage will say during the movie, and I can't wait to see how that turns out.
Yeah. We're all anticipating it.
There's this one point where he is victorious after his fight with the animatronics, and they play Freebird in the background. And he's, basically just, saying, I'm a free bird, killed that other bird.
I mean, that is what the song Freebird is about.
Yeah, but he's saying it, like Nick Cage is saying it.
It's kind of like the movie Highlander, but about birds.
Yes. And also other animatronics that aren't birds.
Wait, is there a... Oh, he does... Oh, there is a bird. The very first one's a bird. The ostrich.
Yeah, it's an ostrich.
I forgot. Because I was this is a total tangent about that this other movie that doesn't have anything to do with what this podcast is about.
Yeah, it's almost like we do this every episode.
Yeah, that's true. Every time the turtle showed up, I was slightly distracted because I was like, that was definitely a bird that they changed into a turtle at some point during production.
Nate, I got a secret for you. My original pitch was that they were all birds, and then when I finished the design, they were like, no, they can't all be birds. What's wrong with you? And we changed them to not be birds. But I think you got a little sneak peek behind the camera and saw they were all birds.
Yeah. I mean, I really have an eye for when things were birds previously.
Okay, I think we're gonna.
Yeah, let's get into that. This is a weird way to start our season finale.
This is the actual season finale. We have done some weird kind of magic to make sure that no scientist, fictional or otherwise, looking at you, Carl Sagan, will get into our podcast.
Yes, we're gonna have a science-free episode.
We might. So, welcome to Pitch Perfect, Season 1 finale. I'll just start off my intro as always. Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. The infamous hero is now the man of the hour, Ernest P. Worrell. The best being a musician to use his amazing powers in never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way, Ernest has assumed the disguise of something we'll figure out later. With lofty goals of being something else we'll probably also figure out later. That's right, welcome to the Importance of Being Ernest, where my co-host and I talk about Ernest's incredible legacy, and how things might be a little bit different if our hero Jim Varney had returned to his home planet so soon.
Yes, this is the final episode of Pitch Perfect, the podcast, not the movie, Season 1, The Importance of Being Ernest. We have watched every movie starring the character Ernest P. Worrell, even the one that he's only kind of in for a second, but also he's not because it's another character disguises him. And we have learned everything we can from these films about what makes an Ernest movie, and also what makes an Ernest movie a good Ernest movie. And we are going to apply that knowledge and come up with a pitch for the perfect Ernest movie. And at the end of this episode, we are going to pitch that movie to you, our beloved and extremely sensual listeners.
Yes. Now, for listeners who might want to jump ahead and hear that perfect pitch, please check out the timestamp in our description that will tell you exactly where you can jump to hear that pitch in general. But if you want to hang out with us as we talk and gibber and jabber back and forth and try to focus all of our knowledge into this giant pile of goo that we eventually mold and sculpt like the great sculptor
whoever makes the those hot dogs, the anthropomorphic hot dogs that are squirting mustard on themselves outside of hot dog stands on the boardwalk, whoever that guy is.
Yeah, like that guy. And then you can go hang out with us and we will do this now. But otherwise, skip ahead and hear our amazing pitch.
Okay, so obviously, I think the first thing we have to knock out here is that what is essential for an Ernest movie, it's not on the list because it's taken as a given, and also it's kind of covered by Hat and Vest, is that it has to have Ernest in it. He's got to be in it, and he has to be the main character.
Yeah, we learned this specifically from Dr. Otto, where he's not in it. And we also learned this from Ernest Saves Christmas, where Ernest isn't really the main character.
So we're going to start there. The first element of our pitch that we have nailed down is it's about Ernest.
Yep.
So
we have figured this out. It took us 10 movies, but we got there.
Yeah. Because, like, you know, we could have... I mean, there's a non-zero chance we'll watch another one of these franchises and we'll be like, you know what? You don't need an Indiana Jones for an Indiana Jones movie, which is kind of a thing I do believe. But that is not the case with Ernest. Gotta have Ernest.
Yeah. So, I mean, should we just read off the essentials list that we have created in our journey?
Yes, I think that's a good place to start, so that we're all on the
All
same page going into this.
Nate, you famously, throughout our friendship, loved to read me lists.
Yes.
So I'm going to pass this honor to you. Read that list, buddy.
Okay, so Ernest has to wear a hat and vest.
Yep.
He's going to do that. I don't think that's the thing we really need to talk about when we're pitching. Just know that when you imagine Ernest doing the things we tell you he's going to do, he's going to be wearing a hat and vest when he does that.
Also, if we say that he's going to be wearing a different hat and vest, it's going to be a very similar hat and vest.
Yes, yeah. There's a visual unity to Ernest. It's kind of like how, you know, like when Mario gets a power-up, it's like, but he's still got a hat and overalls. He just looks like a bee now. That's kind of how Ernest operates.
Yeah, we're going to have Ernest have a hat and vest, but also make him look like a bee now.
Mm-hmm. Who could it be now? It's Ernest. And you know what about him is that he should be a low-status character with ambition. And there should be an element of class struggle in the movie.
Agreed. Ernest always plays a janitor or some kind of mechanic or some kind of blue-collar job, and that's pretty vital.
He's most often a janitor, I believe. If we went back and checked, I think he would be a janitor more often than he isn't. He should be a, quote, crafts, end quote, man. Now, what that means for someone who has, for some reason, skipped to the final episode and not listened to the other one, is that Ernest makes ridiculous contraptions that go haywire and cause comedy and hijinks.
Yes. None of his contraptions work. They all seem crazy. And the best example of this is Ernest Goes to Camp, where he tries to fry 2 rotisserie chickens and, 5 hot dogs at once.
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know, cool, great. Doesn't seem practical, and then it falls apart completely.
Yeah, he's a prolific and passionate, but not skilled inventor. Ernest should spout folksy, quote, wisdom, unquote.
Yes. Whenever Ernest sees something, he knows something about it, even though whatever he says probably doesn't indicate that he knows anything about it.
Yeah, most often this manifests as him saying something that sounds like a wise quote or a proverb or something, but actually doesn't make any sense. Or he's saying very confidently a fact that is obviously and absurdly wrong.
Yep.
He's got various catchphrases, which include him reacting to gross things by going, ew. He has, you know what I mean? Which he says, which that often comes at the end of the folksy wisdom. And he's got a sort of cocky snicker that he does.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
He's a real stinker.
He is a stinker.
And it's important to note that we need to have some kind of gross toilet humor in this movie.
Yeah, otherwise he's not going to be able to do one of these main catchphrases. The movies should have a lot of slapstick comedy. That's kind of the main comedy of an Ernest movie. He is Gamera-esque, which means that he is a friend to all children, but also a child at heart. Which I guess is maybe... I don't know if that's true about Gamera. Is Gamera a child at heart?
I haven't watched enough Gamera movies to tell you that. I've only seen a few. Wish we brought back our guest, Tyler the Football, who's probably seen all of them and would be able to tell us.
Well, I've also seen all of them.
You have?
Yeah, I've seen every Gamera movie.
Then you should be able to answer the question, damn it.
But he says, I'm saying, I don't know. I look at him and it's like, so a lot of times you can't tell what's going on inside a Gamera's brain. I think we should put this on hold and answer this question later in a later season, Lights, Camera, Action.
Oh, man, we definitely should do that. All right, well, just in general, let's just say that Ernest, despite his similarities with the giant turtle, should be a friend to all children and a child at heart.
Yeah.
Because that really makes him someone you can relate with on the screen and endearing.
Yeah, this is like the thing... Oh, I was listening to a podcast, they were talking about a manga or something. And they were talking about characters that are written to be annoying but aren't annoying to the viewer. And they brought up SpongeBob as an example, and I think this is true of Ernest too. It's like the characters can have grating mannerisms, but there needs to be a certain endearing quality and innocence to them, or we're just going to despise them. Pee Wee Herman is another character, obviously a big influence on Ernest. That's another character who has the same sort of thing going on.
Yeah, same thing with Bugs Bunny, who's also a major influence on Ernest, and Ernest is very Bugs Bunny-esque.
Yes. He's like a cross between a giant turtle and a wisecracking rabbit.
And Pee Wee Herman. Yeah, so definitely we got to keep that in mind as we go along. He doesn't necessarily have to have a kid sidekick, but he definitely has to have this sort of innocence to him to let us feel like this guy needs, our support.
Yes, he has to have a complicated relationship with animals and machines.
That is vital. Most of the comedy that we get from previous Ernest movies comes from him either being attacked by animals or having issues with animals or having issues with machines or being attacked by machines, especially machines that he creates.
Yeah, the complicated part is that Ernest loves these things. He loves building stuff, he loves animals, but they cause him endless pain.
Yeah, like when Rimshot trapped him in a dumpster.
Exactly. And sort of feeding into that, often a cause of the relationship being so complicated, is that Ernest needs to be incompetent/inept. What is the distinction between those, and why did we make a distinction between those?
I think, you get down to it, it factors into everything overall. Wherein, he's a craftsman, right? But, he also immediately destroys whatever he's crafting. And, he made the troll trap and Scared Stupid and then immediately got himself stuck in the troll trap.
Yeah.
He just does things where he's, not intending to do it and it just happens and it screws everything up and it's funny.
I think if I had to guess at our reasoning behind this wording, because I think I wrote this part, is, in my mind, incompetent means you're bad at your job. Inept means you're just kind of bad at everything in general.
And both work. When he is usually a janitor, he's bad at it. He tapes up a leaky sink to fix it. He can't mop a floor to save his life. And then just in general, whenever he's out doing stuff to whatever the plot is, he's bad at it mostly.
This is true. There has to be cartoon violence. And I think the reason that this is separate from slapstick is there's lots of things that have slapstick comedy that I wouldn't call cartoon violence. The Three Stooges hit each other, but they never get flattened into a pancake.
Yeah, Ernest gets flattened into a pancake on multiple occasions.
Yeah. He should be overly and quickly confident.
Yes, this factors into folksy wisdom, but the reason we separate it out is because whenever Ernest gets, his superpower, or he, gets involved in being something he's never done before, he will just be like, yep, I can do that. You just get some magical shoes, learns to fly, and that's not amazing to him. That's just now he is completely confident in his ability to fly forever.
Yeah, the second Ernest starts doing something, he believes himself to be an expert at doing it.
Yeah, and I think that's important to separate from folksy wisdom.
Yeah, there should be a fantastical element. Be this fantasy or sci-fi. Some element of the supernatural or the uncanny should be present. It could be as overt as a giant troll that is actively trying to murder him because of the sins of his forefathers. Or it could be as subtle as a Native American ritual that imbues him with immortality.
This is key, I believe. I think we discovered this story journey because we need a hook to bring us into this realm and have something that Ernest can't really fathom and go against. And that really relies itself in the fantastical element.
This also, I think, helps make it so the plot isn't entirely driven by Ernest being stupid, which helps him not be annoying.
You also have to remember, this is the way we're pitching these movies, because it's an Ernest movie, is the general audience of all ages. This is a kids' movie. This is something you can take your family to. So the idea of him being a child at heart, as well as the idea of some sort of fantastical element, really factors into that.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that helps Ernest not be annoying and in fact be endearing is that there should be an element of self-sacrifice. Ernest has got to, at some point in the movie, put it all on the line for the greater good or to protect someone else beside himself.
Mm-hmm.
He has to hit rock bottom.
Yes. Typically this is after he suffers physically and emotionally. He will ultimately triumph. This is really important because we need him to triumph. But at some point in between him suffering physically and emotionally through all the cartoon violence and slapstick, he needs to hit the bottomest bottom that he can hit, because this will really latch us into the character.
And I think if you're listening to this list, you're probably coming to the conclusion that a lot of these are just basic storytelling rules. And I think that that's true and works here, because what they sort of all come together to tell us is that these movies really need to rely on basic, elemental storytelling. Because, like you said, for kids, Ernest is a simple character that is, as we have learned, kind of easy to get wrong. Mm-hmm. So I think relying on this sort of like, almost like primordial story structure is really useful.
I mean, also, just in general, like, it's key to, like, keep that in mind. Like, it's easy to lose focus on stuff like that when you're working with the ideas of, like, oh, a fantastical element. Oh, this needs to happen. You know, it's always good to remember the basics, regardless. So, just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah. Ernest needs to have a hater. We had a lot of discussion over a couple episodes about, like, whether or not this is distinct from an antagonist. And I think the conclusion we came to is it is. Because your antagonist is your character whose nefarious actions are driving the plot. But the hater is another character who can sometimes be combined with the antagonist, but is someone that specifically hates Ernest and exists to underline that Ernest is a low-status character. Mm-hmm. Like, the most clear example of this is in Ernest Goes to Jail with Mr. Puddlesmith, whatever his actual name is, the boss at the bank, who just fucking hates Ernest.
Yeah, and this character doesn't have to weigh fully into the plot, just has to be there to underline that. It doesn't have to be there, like, for the entirety of the movie, but, you know, we'll figure that out as we go, but it's still vital that this character exists. Factoring into that, Ernest needs to be easily bamboozled and distracted. Now, this can work to the hater's advantage or the antagonist's advantage, but in general, a way to get Ernest more involved in whatever complex, fantastical thing is happening across the board.
Yes, yeah. Now, the next thing is the two-character trope, which is another one that we potentially need to explain.
You mean this one isn't in basic film story?
Yeah. You know, like, you read Save the Cat, they're always like, you gotta have the two characters. And everyone knows what that means immediately. You know, there's all those casting call sheets where they're like, we're looking for, you know, like, one of the two characters. I mean, so, like, what this is there needs to be... This is such a strange thing. It's hard to, like... It does not sound like it's essential when you explain it, because it's so specific, and it kind of runs counter to the thing we were talking about of, like, simple, basic, elemental storytelling. It's like, there needs to be a comedy duo, hopefully played by two specific guys, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, who are, like, side characters that the movie cuts to every so often, who ideally do interact with Ernest and play into the larger plot, but don't necessarily have to. And the reason I think that this is essential is, one, it's fun, and we like those two guys, but also, what we learn from movies that don't have them is, like, there has to be something else going on. It can't just be Ernest.
Yeah, Ernest, when doing all the heavy lifting, makes it more difficult to really center ourselves in general. Mm-hmm. You know, he becomes, unfortunately, I hate to say it, he becomes a little tiresome.
Yeah.
And the plot doesn't really necessarily work when you're focusing the entirety of the movie on this particular character, even though, like, he's going to hold up most of the movie. We need something to balance it out.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what that is.
Right, and to add to that, before you get to the last one, I think in general, it's very important to note, to balance the character of Ernest out, the world needs to be chaotic in general. Mm-hmm. You know, Ernest is a chaotic character, but also chaotic stuff just needs to happen. Just general elements of chaos, which will be included in the two-character trope.
Mm-hmm. So the movie should... This is another one where it's like, this doesn't seem essential, but it really actually is. Which is that the movie should need to have an opening credits sequence that has, like, a specific concept, not just like, oh, here's the credits on screen. And it should serve to sort of set the goofy tone of the movie.
Yeah, this factors into two specific things. One, again, the all ages concept. This is kind of a kid's movie, and it'll really help build that tone and set it for the rest of the movie. But secondly, this has a lot to do with just Jim Varney. Jim Varney is especially entertaining when he's just doing this, like, short nonsense stuff in his character work. And I think a really prime example of this is Ernest Scared Stupid, where the opening credits is just Jim Varney doing dumb faces and using a werewolf claw of his own hand on his own face to, like, just set the tone of, like, oh man, we're gonna have a good time here.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's all our essentials. That's all the things we have to keep in mind as we're constructing our idea for this Ernest movie. Mm-hmm. Do we want to sort of set boundaries for ourselves by talking about the high and low points of the franchise now, before we get into the meat of the discussion? The things we're trying to shoot for and the things we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, let's do that quickly, and then I want to set ground rules for our pitch overall.
Okay, sure. So our high point of the entire Ernest franchise, our favorite thing collectively as a podcast of all the things that happen in the Ernest movies is this one bit in Ernest Goes to Jail where he does this sort of extended physical comedy routine with a leaky pen and his mouth. And it's very funny, and like Josh was saying about, like, oh, like, that opening credit sequence is like a showcase for Varney's physical comedy. This is really, like, I think his sort of magnum opus of physical comedy, because it's all just, like, him, his hands, his face, and the prop of the pen and the notepad.
Yes, and for those not in the know, you can definitely check out the scene on YouTube, I found it myself, of just this scene, and it rules. You don't necessarily have to watch Ernest Goes to Jail, although you should, because it's mostly a good movie. Probably one of the high points movies of the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's your favorite, mate. So this scene in particular is kind of like the high point of comedy in general, because it basically could exist outside of the movie.
Yeah, you could this like we called it like a vaudeville scene. It does like call to mind stuff from like silent films. Like this could just be a sequence in a short film that's like wacky juror.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up, like, the Three Stooges before. This is basically, like, a Three Stooges bit.
Yeah. Well, so I think the thing we should learn from this is, like, we have to set up our movie in a way, or specifically work in a moment, for where Varney could have really shown off his physical comedy skills in, like, a really tight comedic sequence. And so our low point, though, is another long sequence of Jim Varney attempting some comedy, except this one's really bad. It involves a character he is doing called Hey You, which is a racist caricature of an Indian servant, like an untouchable. Tries to get a lot of humor out of the caste system. It goes on for too long, it's uncomfortable, and it's racist. And I think, like, the main thing we should learn from this is just let's not be racist, which thankfully I don't think is actually very hard.
No, that shouldn't be a problem for us, but specifically, we're not going to have the Ernest character in any brown face or doing any racist impressions.
Yes. As long as we are doing better than being very racist, we at least won't have the worst Ernest movie. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like, it's like...
You know what I mean?
You know, yes, exactly. The thing... us doing this podcast has infected people with saying, you know what I mean, but it's like created a war inside my mind, because I already would say, you know what I'm saying, or just, you know, like to the point where it was like a real life catchphrase for me. So now I've got them all fighting inside my head every time I say something.
Yes, we have permanently damaged ourselves for the good of the world. Now, before I get to my ground rules, do you want to talk about like the stuff that we like that we really should include in the movie, or should I get on to the ground rules?
I can talk about that. So yeah, so there's a couple things that we decided weren't like essentials. Like there are movies that don't necessarily have these things or utilize them that we like, but these are things that do still feel like they're important. One is Ernest's beloved dog Rimshot, who we all love equally, and one of us isn't weirdly fixated on.
Yeah, totally. I'm just saying, if there was like a wheel of some sort, and the choices were between Rimshot and another Ernest pet, such as Pokey, I might vote towards Pokey, but I will definitely give you Rimshot.
Mm-hmm. And another thing, one of us isn't weirdly fixated on, is that Ernest can't eat. Ernest shouldn't eat. Now, this maybe seems insane, and like it doesn't make any sense to you, and you're kind of right. But here's the thing. Yeah, I mean, okay, yes, we have permanently damaged ourselves by doing this series, but the movies do kind of take a noticeable downturn once Ernest eats on screen.
Yes, also, for the less crazy, more logical pitch of this, whenever there's like Ernest slapstick, a lot of the high points of the Ernest slapstick in these movies have been a scenario where he has difficulty eating. This includes the pancake bit from Ernest in the Army. This includes Eggs Erroneous from Ernest Goes to Camp. This includes Ernest getting a lobster on his face from Ernest going to jail.
Yeah.
You know, these things are like peak comedy in these movies, and it has something to do with Ernest having difficulty eating. I don't know if that's correlated or not, but I noticed the correlation. It's infected my brain. and I'm gonna push for it.
I mean, they really do know that Ernest putting something in his mouth or getting something stuck on his face is funny, and they get a lot of mileage out of it in these movies.
They get a lot of mileage. It's like a thing. Like, he always puts something in his mouth in every movie.
Yeah. So, Ernest, this is another one that takes a little bit of explanation. Ernest should be, I think this ties mostly back into it being a kid's movie, but Ernest should be chaste. The hornier Ernest is, the worse the movie is. Like,
sorry, I'm just laughing because, like, we've been ridiculously horny on this podcast, and, like, we're the ones, like, saying, no, Ernest can't be horny.
Well, you know what? This podcast is bad, and so are the movies where Ernest is horny.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, the thing about Ernest, we've talked about this, he's a child at heart, and in any Ernest movie where he has a love interest, it has never worked. No. This may have to do with the fact that there's a lot of inherent sexism in these movies that we are not going to ever include in our final pitch because we're better than that. But, you know, just in general, we feel like this should be avoided because it really detracts from the Ernest character.
Yeah. Well, I think that I do want to, like, get a little bit more specific before... I'm going to say before anybody says anything, like there's someone that's going to complain to us about this, but...
actually...
well, actually... But
you feel like the sniper red dots in our head?
Yeah, I know. Like, two of the movies that we like them... I definitely think it's a ratio thing, like I said. It's like, the more horny is, the worse it is. It works fine, I think, for the most part, if Ernest has, like, a crush. There's the very subtle version in Goes to Camp, and there's the more overt version in Goes to Jail. But neither of those really progress beyond Ernest has kind of a puppy love crush on a woman. And even then, like, one of the things that they do with the woman that he has a crush on and goes to jail was for a long time our low point of the Ernest franchise. So it is like, it is something you have to be careful with in these movies because, you know, like you said, there's a lot of, what I hope is like time period born sexism.
Mm-hmm. I also want to note, because I've been thinking about this, the best version, and I think you're going to agree with me on this, of Ernest having some sort of puppy love relationship is actually in Ernest Goes to School. An awful movie that no one should watch. Mm-hmm. But where Ernest has this crush on this music teacher, and he has this weird dream fantasy sequence that is actually pretty funny. And it doesn't really impact the plot that much. It mostly just is a side thing that kind of gets paid off, but not really. And with that being said, like, the reason it works more than any others is because his crush is not really a character. And
yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword.
It doesn't really add to the movie. You know, so I feel like even when it works, it's like a dead end, and I don't think we should pursue it for our pitch.
Yes, I would agree with you. Had you not forgotten about the bisexual icon, Professor Mellon, and his beautiful romance with Ernest and Ernest Rides Again.
Okay, fine. Ernest can have a bromance, but I think it should still be asexual.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a kids movie. Like, they don't need to get it on.
Yeah.
Even regardless of the gender or tenured status of his love interest.
Okay, let's move on, please.
Well, that's that pretty much for that sort of category of, like, honorable mentions, sub-essentials, if you want to call them that.
I do want to throw in one more.
Okay, sure. Hit me with it.
We've talked about this before, and we removed it as an essential in general. Ernest being like a master of disguise, and Ernest doing all these random characters, and a lot of them don't work. A lot of them are crazy and insane. But it really does showcase Jim Varney's potential. I mean, there's a version of it where none of them work, like in Count Otto. I think that was an important lesson to learn from that movie. Mm-hmm. But there is always one character in particular that both you and I think a lot of people have enjoyed greatly, which is Aunt Nelda. Ernest doing Aunt Nelda.
That was one of the biggest surprises doing this, for me, doing this series. That was how much affection I have for the character of Aunt Nelda now. Like, before, when we started this, I was like, oh yeah, Ernest, sometimes he dresses up as this, like, aunt character, whatever. And now at the end, like, we audibly cheered when Aunt Nelda showed up on screen in Dr. Otto. Like, and kind of did the same thing in Ernest Goes to Africa. I was like, there is something kind of special about this character. It's such... I think the thing that makes her stand out Well, one is, for some reason, they regularly use her in a way that cuts off bad bits.
Yeah.
So that makes her more endearing. The other thing is, like, a lot of Ernest's other characters are... I'm not saying Aunt Nelda isn't a really broad, cartoony character, but, like, a lot of his other characters are very broad, where it's just like, oh, Ernest is, like, a fucking... Australian outdoorsman, and that's, like, just the character. It's just, like, he does a funny accent. That is the accent this character would have. Whereas Aunt Nelda is, like, a weirdly specific and developed bit. Where it's not just, like, oh, he's playing an elderly woman. She's this, like, snarky, jaded woman who has many dead sons and a terrible husband who is sometimes dead.
Yeah, and also her neck is broken.
And she has a neck brace for some reason. She always has the neck brace. And she has, like, a very specific voice. It's, like, besides Ernest, is probably his most well-developed character.
Which is why we like it so much. And I think we may consider having Ernest do some disguise in this movie or having Ernest do some other character in this movie. But I think we should definitely, keep in mind Aunt Nelda.
I feel like we should do our best to work Aunt Nelda into our movie, because just out of respect for all that she's given us.
Real breath of fresh Nelda. Okay, so I think that covers it. Now, I had an idea. We're making this movie pitch, and we're pitching whatever, and we know this movie's not going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. So this gives us freedom to do whatever we want, but we should restrict ourselves. So Let's do a yin and yang. I think for the yin of we can cast whoever we want. You and I could kill ourselves going back and forth on who would play a great modern day Ernest. This is the part where you throw out one.
Oh, Tom Hardy. It's not really thick Ernest.
Sure, Tom Hardy. Great.
No, okay, here's the thing, though. I said that as a joke because I wanted to imagine thick Ernest. But think about Venom. And then tell me I'm wrong.
Too horny, Nate.
Yeah, you're right. Just Venom on its own. Just bringing up Venom is too horny.
Yeah. I would say Evan Peters. They actually have him for Ace Ventura, and I think that's really great casting. But in general, we're going to cast Jim Varney as our Ernest. We're going to use Gaylord Sartain and Bill Berge as our two guys, probably. We're going to bring people back from the past that we are not able to do if we were actually doing this in real life. But we should ground ourselves with a gang of we
have to put Andrew Yang in the movie.
God, no, I hate that guy.
Mayoral candidate Andrew Yang.
No,
has to be in our film.
No, screw that guy. He doesn't even know that York is a real place. He doesn't know anything about England. Fuck that guy.
That was so weird.
Oh, God.
And then he put that, wait, real fast though. He posted that picture where he was on Gay Street and was like, LGBT, rainbow flag emoji, and then got bullied into deleting it.
Oh my God, I fucking hate that guy so much. He is such a fake.
Yeah.
Alright, whatever. Getting me off topic.
Sorry.
The yang is that we need to ground ourselves in the budget of this movie.
Okay.
The way that we need to pitch this movie is with practical effects, is with really small locations, is with, we can't film the Lord of the Rings Ernest movie. We need to pick a sensible way of filming this movie, a sensible way of doing this movie, a sensible way of introducing things to this movie, because otherwise it won't feel like an Ernest movie.
Okay, yeah, I like that. I like that it's like, this has to be a movie they could have made.
Yes. So, free reign on keeping original actors, but, limited reign on what we can do. And I think that is fair.
I like rounding ourselves in the, this would still be basically the same crew, but it's like, we're not, like you said, not limited by, what has happened to these people. But I also, I also think, bending of time and space should be, we can't put, Orson Welles in it, right?
No.
We're not going to do that either.
For example, let's say we bring in actors that would originally come in for, an Ernest movie, around that time frame. We have to keep in mind that would cost money.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't want to include
Emilio Estevez.
Yes, maybe we don't want to include Emilio Estevez in this movie because that'd be weird. But maybe we do. Who knows? So we're just going to keep that in mind as we move forward.
I'm just quietly crossing off Ernest versus Mighty Ducks. Proud of my notebook.
Yeah, we can't do Ernest meets Darth Vader. I'm sorry.
But what about... No, never mind.
Yeah, okay. Moving on.
Okay. I like that. Those are good rules to follow by. I mean, that's also going to limit us. Because, like, if without those, we could just go bonkers and be like, it's Ernest just... I don't know.
Yeah.
Fights the Avengers. Like, we can't do that.
Now that we've done that, we need to figure out what is the central topic of this movie. Now, through our podcast and our insane ideas, I have collected our joke Ernest pitches of titles.
Now I'm nervous to hear my sins repeated to me.
And I shall list them off, and we shall decide if we're going to use one of them as our general topic for this movie, or come up with something different. Are you ready, Nate?
As ready as I'll ever be.
Cool. So, remember that before I started this list, I talked about being grounded. Are you ready? Here we go. Start off, Ernest Hamilton.
No. Fuck, dude, this is a funny podcast. Okay, so what I think that meant, though, what...
Okay, cool.
Hamilton. We really came out the jump with the fucking gold. We were on fire immediately. That didn't necessarily mean just do Hamilton with Ernest. What did that mean? It was like Ernest fights in the Revolutionary War?
It would mean something along the lines of Ernest goes back in time. Like, that'd be the fantastical element. And he has to help Ben Franklin or something. I don't know.
Is it still a musical?
It could
Does
be.
he rap?
I would be down for an Ernest musical. One of our highest points in Ernest Goes to Camp is Ernest singing off of God It's Raining.
True. That's true. Okay, what's the next idea we came up with?
Ernest Goes to Double Ernest. Now,
that's a thing that makes sense.
To make this make more sense, we have different titles. We have a riff on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Dr. Worrell and Mr. Ernest. And we also have a reference to a movie that everybody knows and loves, Ernest Duplicity.
I guess it's so stupid. Why did we do this? Okay, so that premise is that there's multiple Ernests. We kind of talked about that one a lot over the course of the podcast. At some points it was just clones of Ernest. At some point it was like Ernest's personas break free from his body and he has to deal with them. Dr. Otto made me less confident in the idea because they just did it and it was bad. But I still really like that one.
Yeah, we'll consider it. Next one is maybe a bit more grounded. Also kind of riffs on the Ernest formulated idea that's happening in some of his movies. Secret Agent Ernest.
Yeah, that's very straightforward. It's your Ernest James Bond parody. They weirdly dance around making that movie for a lot of this. I know the one they really wanted to make that they never made was like a pirate one. But it seemed like they also wanted to do this. It was like they kept hinting at this, and they also kept kind of trying to make the Ernest Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, the Ernest Indiana Jones movie is overdone, and we're not going to touch that.
No.
Because they were so fucking obsessed with it that they even like went out of their way to like be like, hey, one of our other Ernest movies after Jim Varney died was another Indiana Jones ripoff.
Wild. The wild that they kept trying to go to that well.
So Secret Agent Ernest, much like Secret Agent Cody Banks, has a lot of potential.
Yeah.
Hopefully, unlike Secret Agent Cody Banks, we will try to fulfill that potential.
Damn. R.I.P. Frankie Muniz.
I'm a big Muniz head, but that movie sucks. Okay, cool. Let's ground ourselves in reality. Let's talk about Ernest Goes Bowling.
What? What? Why did we come up with that? What does that mean?
I don't know. This is one of the ones that we pitched.
It's really straightforward, I guess. It's just a bowling movie with Ernest. Why was that one of our ideas?
I don't know, but it's on the list.
Sure, man. Okay, I mean, that seems like that could be one that existed. If I didn't know what all the Ernest movies were and you told me that was one of them, I would believe you.
Cool. So that's the most grounded movie. We can have a lot of physical comedy out of that. I like that idea. It's insane that's like something that fits in with Ernest Hamilton, but yeah, totally. So, going from that low, let's go back to a high. to Ernest the cowboy inside.
What? Okay. Man, that really sounds like it's nothing. What is... So that was... What? Okay. So in fucking Ernest Goes to School, right? There's one of the many inexplicable things that happens in that movie is he gets directions from a cowboy ghost. And this was like a movie where... Like, it's like Fight Club, but with Ernest and the cowboy instead of Ed Norton and Brad Pitt, right? Was that the idea for this movie?
Kinda. I mean, also, it really builds up for Ernest constantly, like, being obsessed with John Wayne. And, like, all his John Wayne impressions. And the idea that Ernest is a cowboy in general, and he could just go to, like, an old western town as a janitor, and that could be the movie.
Mm-hmm. But it has this really pretentious-sounding title.
Yeah. For sure.
Okay.
Cool. Ready for the next one?
Sure.
Ernest no, I can't. Hold on. I'll do it.
Collect yourself and tell me what it is.
I'll do a clean one. Okay. Ernest Wide Shut.
Okay. That seems like, right off the bat, you know how we were like, these are kids' movies? That probably disqualifies that idea. We should be arrested. Why did we say that?
Yes, we. Definitely not me. We.
I mean, that would be funny. I don't think that's not a great idea. I don't think we should do that one.
No, but I like the idea of the poster of Ernest just covering his eyes. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got two more. Enter the Ernest first. Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, that was kind of like our first idea.
Yeah.
That we had, if I remember correctly. Yeah, you know, Spider-Verse, you got all the different Spider-Mans, Ernest, you got all the different Ernests. This would be a way to kind of... the thing that I like the least about this idea is the way that it kind of too clearly acknowledges that Jim Varney died. Because, like, it would presumably have him selecting a successor Ernest.
I mean, that could also be kind of, like, in a heartwarming way, great.
Mm-hmm. Anyone can wear the hat. You know what I mean?
Oh, God. Now I'm going to cry. Really bringing me down. But yeah, it's like similar to Ernest Goes to Double Ernest, where it's like we have a bunch of Ernest characters in the movie, and maybe one of them's bad, you know, whatever. But like that happens, and it would be pretty cool. Enter the Spider-Verse is the best superhero movie, and Ernest is kind of a superhero. Mm-hmm.
It's weird though, because you said, I think you might want to take it out again, because you said, except for Ang Lee's Hulk, like really quietly. Like I don't even think the mics picked it up.
Anyway, moving on. We got, finally, Ernest Libre.
I mean, this is a good one, right? Ernest wrestling. Like, I love Nacho Libre. I don't know how you feel about that movie.
I think it's great. I like that movie. But, like, in general, like, Ernest, throughout the movies, has canonically loved wrestling. He's a wrestling fan.
Yeah, that is, like, an established part about his character. He likes WWE professional wrestling.
And he has, wrestled in Goes to School, and it's one of the best bits.
This is, like, a ton of room for slapstick comedy. A ton of room for him to do different characters, because he can do different personas. We can see him try and fail to be a heel. We can put him in different masks. We can have all sorts of wacky characters who are the wrestlers. There's great room to have, like, to basically do, the greatest wrestling story of all time, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Vince McMahon. We can have a Vince McMahon character be our antagonist and hater. Or we can have him be the antagonist and have, like, a heel wrestler that's the hater. Like, this one this would almost just be the easiest for us to come up with a whole ass movie around, I think.
Yeah, which is why we should challenge ourselves with Ernest Goes Bowling. No. See, I've come around. Our podcast is great and not dumb, and everybody should listen to it.
It's a good podcast. Now that we're done this segment where we just laugh at our own jokes.
Yeah, we don't have any more saved Ernest pitches, unless I'm forgetting any, Nate.
Not that I can think of, but I wanted to get into some stuff that just is like the natural extension of how the Ernest movies works. The big thing, like, I think people are going to almost be getting annoyed that we're so deep into this episode that we haven't mentioned it, is like the most obvious place to go to fucking every franchise, every joke about a long-running franchise does this. There's Ernest Goes to Space, right?
Mm-hmm. That was previously pitched idea, kind of. Ernest Spaced Out was a movie that they might have done that they had plans for before Jim Varney unfortunately passed away.
Now, I think the thing with this is, one, it's very easy to come up with. I think it would actually be harder to plot out than Ernest Libre. But the other thing is, like, Rocket Man exists.
Mm-hmm.
You can watch Rocket Man. And I loved that movie when I was a kid. He gets all blue from the toilet in the space station. Genius.
Now,
very Ernest type of move, that particularly, too.
I might be wrong, but isn't the recent biopic that came out about Elton John also called Rocket Man?
Yeah, it is. I never thought about that.
So, to be clear, we're not talking about that Rocket Man.
No, I'm talking about the comedy about an astronaut.
Rocket Man's already been done, and, you know, that's kind of like the Ernest space movie. And in general, I feel like, again, as you mentioned, it'd be harder to pitch that movie and work within our realistic budget to do that. Mm-hmm. So I'm really comfortable with not going towards that realm of ideas, even though I understand it would be a popular suggestion.
Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, you know, for every light there is a shadow.
I really hope you're not talking about Ernest White again.
Well, there's Ernest Goes to the Center of the Earth, which is the equal opposite of Ernest, which I also think would be one of those things that's too expensive, and also, you know, there's Journey to the Center. You can watch movies about going to the center of the Earth. We don't need Ernest to go there.
Yeah, also, the most recent Journey to the Center of the Earth movie sucked butts, so I definitely don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, in the middle between the two of these, the perfect balance, which also calls back to the past, but also to the future, is Ernest Goes to Space Camp.
Oh, I thought you were going to pitch Earthnest?
Earthnest?
I don't know what that would be, but you started with space, and then you went to the center of the Earth, and then you're meeting in the middle. I was like, what is Earthnest? What is this?
Well,
What's
I'm
happening?
Write down Earthnest. We can figure out what that means later. No, I was pitching Ernest Goes to Space Camp.
Oh. Okay, I mean, I'll put it on the list if that's what you want to do.
I'm just saying that's there.
You just want him to be back in camp again.
I was saying. They promised it with Ernest in the army, and it wasn't true.
You're right. Thank you.
Yeah, and then I think one of the things we should avoid that comes up naturally, like... Okay, so here's the thing with Ernest movies, right? Like, the most common title formulation for an Ernest movie is Ernest Goes to Blank.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's why we're like, Ernest Goes to Space, Ernest Goes to Space, like, all that. I think one thing we want to avoid, even though there's a plethora of them, is Ernest Goes to Another Country. Because the only time they did that, well, one, it was a continent, and two, it was bad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like there might be some comedy potential in, like, Ernest does Eurotrip.
Okay.
You know, like, but that's, like, the only one. Like, anything in Europe is probably fine. We should never, ever go to anything outside of Europe with Ernest.
Yeah, that's not really a strength of this franchise. I think these are other ones that are sort of like, where Ernest Goes to the Past is an idea of various time periods. That's a thing we could do. And that's kind of covered by Ernest Hamilton.
So kind of covered by Ernest the Cowboy Inside.
Yeah. But there's also, like, we could have, like, a Caveman Ernest movie.
Encino Ernest?
Incerno Man?
No, that doesn't work.
Ernest Goes to the Future. There's various genres of future. You could have, like, a shiny, fun Jetsons future. You could have Ernest go to, like, a dystopian cyberpunk world.
Yeah, that also might be covered in Enter the Ernestverse.
Yeah. So I think those are the basics. I can't really... Well, and then the other thing with Goes to is, like, two of our favorite movies. I think your favorite and my favorite. Your favorite is Ernest Goes to Camp, right?
No, it's Slam Dunk. But Ernest Goes to Camp is a close second.
Okay. Well, my favorite is Ernest Goes to Jail. So it's like we do highly rate the movies where it's like Ernest Goes to, and then it's just like a place or like an institution. But then much lower on our list is Ernest Goes to School, which is the same thing. But obviously there's just like a ton of places we could send him. Ernest Goes to the Pentagon, Ernest Goes to the United Nations, Ernest Goes to the DMV, Ernest Goes to the Sewer, Ernest Goes to...
Hold on. Ernest Goes to the DMV?
Yeah, I mean, that's just an idea we could have.
That sounds awful.
Yeah, it does, but I'm just saying. So there's those, but like that's just like a wide open field of like anything.
Can I just want to suggest something extraordinarily dumb, but I love it.
Just go for it.
Ernest Goes to the Internet?
Okay, I think this actually was one we kind of talked about briefly. It might not have been on mic. But like, Ernest in cyberspace, Ernest Goes to the Internet, like that's a solid idea.
Wreck-It Ernest?
Ernest wrecks the internet?
Yeah.
I never saw that. I saw the first one.
No, but I've had the plot excruciatingly detailed to me by my friend Tyler the Football.
Oh yeah, I think I was there for that. I don't remember that. But I don't remember anything that he said. Sorry, Tyler.
Me neither. I think I spaced out. Sorry, Tyler.
I used to, this is totally unrelated, when I was like a little kid, That should be no surprise to people who've listened to me talk on this podcast. I was a real nervous scaredy cat, and I could not watch horror movies. So for a long time, I would not watch horror movies, and I would get my friends to explain the plots of them to me afterwards. The one that I remember distinctly is riding on the bus and having someone explain everything that happened in the movie Darkness Falls, the like horror movie about the Tooth Fairy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's a thing about me. That's so just a little bit more compulsive oversharing from your favorite co-host Nate.
Now, speaking of horror movies, they did Ernest Scared Stupid. I don't think we need to do.
Yeah, I don't think we need to touch that. I don't think we need to touch that genre at all.
Cool. Let's narrow this down somehow and figure out what we're going to do and just pick one. Now, do you think we could do that organically, or do you want to throw some chaos in the mix and have somebody pick it for us?
Well, I'll tell you right now, though, the one that I'm like gravitating to the most is Ernest Libre. Like, that just feels like the cleanest to me. It's the one that I'm having the most fun thinking about ideas for.
Okay.
So, like, I would say my vote would be Ernest Libre.
Cool. I have two. You know what? Oh, I have three that I'm leaning towards. So I'm going to have a little bit more difficulty. But I love the idea of putting Ernest in, like, an Old West saloon. I like the idea of Ernest the Cowboy Inside.
Mm-hmm.
I like the general nature of Ernest Goes Bowling, because what the fuck is that? I want to figure it out. And then also, I like Ernest Goes to the Internet. I think that's fun. I think that's a cool idea of, like, Ernest using boomer logic on computers.
Okay, but can I try and sell you on Ernest Libre?
No. I'm going to pick one of these, and I think you and I are going to have to duke it out.
Okay.
Fuck it. I'm going to pick Ernest Goes Bowling.
Oh my god. Okay, sure. Okay, so how are we going to settle this then?
Well, here's the thing. We are contractually obliged to bring back a guest that we didn't use before, and he's going to have his revenge. I bring you, drumroll please, Wheel Patrick Harris.
It's great to have you.
Welcome back, Wheel.
On the show again, Wheel. I'm really excited for that movie you're going to be in where Nicolas Cage plays himself. That sounds amazing.
Yes. We here at this podcast love Nick Cage. But also, we remember that you were good in other stuff, and we want to apologize for snubbing you. And hopefully you'll do us justice by determining whether or not we should do Ernest Libre or Ernest Goes Bowling as our final pitch.
I'm going to be so sad if he picks your thing. But it's fine. I'll power through it. I will learn to love Ernest Goes Bowling if that's what it takes. Okay. What are you thinking, Wheel? Okay. He said Ernest Goes Bowling. Can I just, can I just say, like, I feel like it would have been so clean. Like, Ernest just has some menial job. He goes to the, like, you know, you do it like an old school wrestling promotion where they're at, like, a stadium every night. Like, they have, like, a home base. He goes every night or every week to see the wrestling. And he admires one of the wrestlers. And he wants to be the champion. Like, that's his ambition. And the hater is the guy who runs the promotion. And Chuck and Bobby could be, like, a jobber tag team. And as, like, a callback to Eggs Erroneous, they're trying to develop, like, the ultimate finishing move. And they do it and teach it to Ernest at the end of the movie. And he uses it to beat the heel champ. But all that's lost, like tears and rain. And we must instead turn toward our new master, Ernest Goes Bowling. A movie where Ernest goes bowling. Okay. I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm moving forward. The me that loved Ernest Libre is dead. And now a bold new Nate stands before you, glistening in pink, like a freshly born baby. It's fine. Yeah, we're doing Ernest Goes Bowling. It's fine. Is the other thing, though? The other thing? You know how you were like, oh, like putting other people in it, like they would cost money? You know what celebrities would be pretty cheap to get into a movie? Retired wrestlers.
Or bowling celebrities?
You know who could have very easily been in an Ernest wrestling movie?
Who?
Roddy Piper. It would have worked for the time period. He would have been alive. And he would have been willing to do it.
We can ignore Wheel. Fuck Wheel. Let's do it.
No! I want people to know what we've lost. I want them to feel the pain in their hearts that I'm feeling. And I want them to deal with that as we move forward into developing the plot for Ernest Goes Bowling.
Okay. Alright, fine. Thank you, Wheel Patrick Herrick, for your scene of ice. Now get out before Nate kills you.
Okay, so I think the best place to start here, right, if we're coming up with a plot, is to start with one of our essentials, which is that Ernest needs to have an ambition. We've seen time and again that the movie doesn't really work unless he has that, and that is sort of the foundation of the plot. So what does Ernest want that involves bowling?
Okay, well, I think we start off with Ernest being a janitor or some kind of maintenance man at the bowling place. Like, he's the guy behind the scenes that does, like, cleaning up the pins and whatnot, setting them up, ready to go. Maybe he's, like, a craftsman, and part of his, like, crafts is that he creates some dumb machine to make it easier for the pins to be set up, right?
Sure, that works totally.
The ambition could be very similar to Ernest Slam Dunk, where there's a professional bowling team that goes there, like, every weekend. Maybe they're a bunch of dads, or maybe they're a bunch of, kids, and they're going up in bowling championships against somebody, and Ernest just really wants to be a part of the team.
Okay, here's what I was thinking. Maybe he wants something that is largely actually unrelated to bowling, and he has to win the bowling championship in order to get it. Like, either to pay for this thing that he wants with the prize, or that he literally wants the prize because it's something he likes.
Or he could want to be the manager of the bowling alley, because he has all these wonderful, like, craftsman ideas and stuff, and he can do so by hosting he could prove his worth by hosting a, like, night in, like, like a lockout sort of thing,
Okay.
and it just going off the rails from there.
So in that idea, it's not a movie, it's not like a sports movie where Ernest is bowling. It's just kind of a workplace comedy that is set in a bowling alley.
Yeah, that could work, and then we could have, like, the different teams, and the two guys could be, like, people on a team, or what have you, or his, like, one of the two guys could be, like, managing, like, the food, and one of the other one's, like, managing something else, like laser tag nearby. Or the haters managing laser tag.
The hater managing laser tag is good. I think Chuck and Bobby should be the guys who work at the shoe rental.
Ooh, yeah, okay, that's good.
And they're very serious about it. And you can bring in back that thing from, like, Goes to Jail and stuff, where, like, Bobby is, like, really intense, and he's like a shoe cop. He's, like, very serious about getting the shoes back and whatnot, and Chuck has to cover for him.
Also, he, like, is very serious about, like, measuring people's feet.
Yes.
Okay, so let's figure out before we get too far, let's figure out what Ernest's job is. He has to have a job. We've learned that he can't just be this rambling old coot that gets involved in stuff, because that doesn't work.
I thought we decided he was going to be the janitor at the bowling alley.
I know. I'm just like writing it down. So, like.
Oh, okay. I also wrote it down. I already wrote it down.
Okay. It seems like we were just, like, having freeform talking, but I want to, like, nail shit down. So Ernest is janitor at bowling alley.
I've also written down Chuck and Bobby work at the shoe rental.
Got that. And he wants. Well, we have to decide what he wants to be. Does he want to be the manager, or does he want to be on a team? Like, I feel like the workplace comedy bit is better because we're not just ripping off a slam dunk.
That's true. But I do also like the idea that it's like Ernest wants to buy a boat or something. And he's just like, I have to win the bowling tournament so I can get this beautiful boat. And it's like a really crummy looking boat.
Okay.
But he's just enamored of it. Maybe he wants to be a fisherman.
Okay. Maybe, like, he's, like, hanging out with, like, a group of bowling dads, and they're all talking about fishing off their yacht or something.
Mm-hmm. Maybe he wants to be a dad and he needs the money from to pay the adoption bills. No, I do like the idea that he wants to run the bowling. So maybe the guy who runs the bowling alley is, like, old, and, like, he's gonna retire, and they don't have enough money, and, like, when he retires, the bowling alley is gonna have to get shut down. So Ernest is trying to come up with a plan to boost the business, because he cuts a deal with the guy who owns it where it's like, look, I know you love the bowling alley, Ernest, but, like, I can't just give it to you if I think it's going to fail. Like, I would rather just have it die, with me. I don't think he would say it like that. That's very extreme. But he's like, I'd rather just see it end, under my rule than, like, have you and it drag each other down. So you have to prove to me that you can not just run the business, but that you can grow the business. And if you do that before I retire, then I'll hand the bowling alley over to you.
Okay, I like that idea. And then, I mean, we could also throw in some off objective of him winning money to get the boat that he wants.
I don't need to have the boat thing. I don't think, like, if he's trying to run the bowling alley, he doesn't also have to be in a tournament.
Okay, I'm just saying, like, we could try to work in both ideas.
And so I think that this, if we do the thing where he's trying to grow the bowling alley's business, then I think, like, we can have the hater be someone inside of the bowling alley.
I really like the laser tag idea.
Yeah, that's fine. Or maybe that's just a place that... Okay, so maybe the hater and the... This is an instance in which the hater and the antagonist are one and the same. And the laser tag is not part of the bowling alley, it's just next door. And he wants the bowling alley to go out of business so he can buy it and expand into it.
Okay.
And open up, like, a bigger laser tag arena. And it's like, we can... Even though I don't agree with this, we could play up, like, ooh, laser tag's scary because it's, like, violent. And it's like...
Yeah.
These kids are rowdy hooligans, and bowling is peaceful and beautiful.
So dumb. I love it. Okay, laser tag antagonist.
Laser antagonist.
To expand over bowling alley.
Yeah.
So he wants to make everything go bad.
And I'm having a real, like, vision for this character now.
Okay, cool.
I want him to be like, I really want to lean into, like, laser tag is futuristic, and have this guy be, like, a total, like, dork, but he's, like, he's dressed up like a character from The Matrix, and he's got, like, big, tall boots and little tiny sunglasses, but he's, like, a total dork.
He's also eating Dippin' Dots because of the ice cream in the future, and that's what you'd have in the future.
I only eat Dippin' Dots, Ernest. Look at you with your caveman ice cream, and we can have, like, a comedy sequence where Ernest eats an ice cream cone and he makes fun of him.
Definitely. Or fails to eat an ice cream cone in front of him. Okay, well, I feel like we should still have a hater that isn't the antagonist, and I like the idea of the hater being the guy that runs the food, like, area.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like an anti-Exeronius, where, like, this guy just, like, don't get in my way of doing what I do best, and he makes, like, fucking dollar hot dogs.
Yeah. He's like, the nacho cheese is to be at a specific temperature.
Yeah.
And your shenanigans are fucking up the air pressure.
Exactly.
In the bowling alley, Ernest.
Like, eventually they'll get along, but he's going to be, like, constantly, like, saying, Ernest, don't fuck it up. You suck.
Okay, so, like, a really fastidious concession stand operator. Can this be Linda Cash?
Yes, this could definitely be Linda Cash.
Okay, cool. Then I like that.
She's, like, kind of channeling her Mrs. Mellon character, in a sense.
Yeah. Almost like a combination between Mrs. Mellon and her character from Goes to School.
Yes, but she'll have a better character arc for both of those because we're going to treat her with respect and dignity and not just like a leggy waitress.
Yes. Okay. I like that. So the hater is Linda Cash running the concession stand, and she doesn't like Ernest shenanigans, and she's very traditional about serving hot dogs.
Yes.
And nachos.
Yes. She wants everything to be safe and in regulation.
Mm-hmm. His friends are Chuck and Bobby who work at the shoe canner, and the antagonist is the cyberpunk dork who runs the laser tag place next door, who wants to expand into it. Ernest's goal is to raise money to take over the bowling alley. This seems like a pretty solid base for a movie going forward, right?
Yeah, I definitely think so. We really nailed everything down, but I think we're missing something super important.
Rimshot?
Yeah, definitely rimshot, but also a fantastical element.
Yes, you're right. We are missing a fantastical element. This is somehow too grounded. Okay, what is our fantastical element? Obviously, like with stuff like this, I think the easiest thing is you just go, there's a ghost there. Just put a ghost in.
I mean, that could work.
What if there's time travel?
Okay.
What if Ernest has to run... If Ernest doesn't fix the bowling alley, then something goes horribly wrong in the future. And we have another character who's supporting Ernest, who is a time traveler from the future, who's invested in Ernest succeeding, but is also, like, frustrated with how incompetent and silly Ernest is. Maybe it's Ernest's descendant.
Ooh, I love this. Because, hear me out. This factors into the laser tag versus bowling, you know, hardcore versus peaceful, where if laser tag wins, we get a dystopian future.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking, right? The laser tag wins, and we get a violent future with, like, people, like, the laser tag escalates into laser war.
Yeah.
And the only way to save it is to stop it here at the epicenter.
Which is saving the bowling alley. And he has to do so because Ernest will fail on his own. So he goes back in time to help out Ernest, and even though he's, like, upset... So they'll eventually develop a bromance, right? But he starts off being upset because Ernest is Ernest.
Yeah. We could also then have... We have two haters, I think. Because we can actually make the actual antagonist be another time traveler. who's like, he's like the fucking, he's like the leader of the mutants from Dark Knight Returns. And he goes back in time to team up with the laser tag guy.
Okay, but if
because
we do
he
that,
wants the violent future.
If we do that,
and so
it should be played by the same guy who plays the laser tag guy.
But like with like a big muscle suit on?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so there's two time travelers who represent warring visions for the future who come to the past to have their ultimate ideological conflict in the battlefield of this bowling alley.
Yep, we've turned Ernest Goes Bowling into Ernest Goes Bowling to the Future.
We're geniuses. We're so smart. Okay.
Cool. I mean, calling that for the fucking title, though, right?
What? Oh, Ernest Goes Bowling to the Future?
Yeah.
I think it should just be Ernest. It'll be Ernest Goes Bowling. I think it should be totally misleading.
Well, Ernest Slam Dunk
like,
does
Slam
have
Dunk Ernest.
God versus the devil in it.
That's exactly what I'm thinking of. We love Slam Dunk Ernest. One of the things we love is the fact, like, I literally called it out in my description for when I uploaded the podcast to Anchor. Like, you will look at that and you will just conclude that that is a movie about Ernest playing basketball, and you will understand, like, 4% of what the actual movie is.
So this is what we're doing with Ernest Goes Bowling.
Yeah, Ernest Goes Bowling, you're like, yeah, okay, it's the Ernest Bowling movie. And then somebody sidles up to you and go, you know, that's like actually about like the time travel and Ernest fights a guy from the future.
Yeah, no, this rules. This is great.
It's like Ernest Goes Bowling, but also it's like this fucking Marvel 2099 future encroaches on it. Okay. I really like this now.
Cool. Right, I can't believe we combined Ernest Goes to the Future with Ernest Goes Bowling, but this is great.
No, it's beautiful what we've done here.
Okay. All right, so we have the basis for this movie, right? Now we have to kind of pace it out, right?
Yeah.
So I think we need to just have like a basic, what's our starting point? What's our like middle point? Like the basic kind of like film conversation of like how this happens.
Do you want to go through, we could go through 7-point plot structure. I feel like that would be a pretty easy thing for us to do.
Yeah, I feel like that's like the easiest route to do this, and it will also just help our listeners out.
Mm-hmm. So we start with the hook, which is your character's starting point, and it's basically the opposite of the resolution, which is the end of the movie. So our hook is, we kind of already established that. We've got two hooks, right? Mm-hmm. We've got this moment where Ernest, like I assume we open the movie with some wacky hijinks in the bowling alley. We have a little bit of a heartwarming moment where like some kids are having like a birthday or something, and Ernest does something nice for them, and it's like, oh, this bowling, like for as goofy as he is, this bowling alley is like a nice place. Mm-hmm. And then we establish the mean laser tag guy. Maybe those kids that Ernest is helping in the opening sequence get bullied by some kids coming out of the laser tag place. Mm-hmm. And then we have the dude pull Ernest aside and explain that he's going to retire and this place is going to shut down. And he makes the deal with Ernest. I guess that would actually be our plot turn. And then you're
jumping.
Yes. Oh, so our hook is the bowling alley is a nice place and the laser tag is not a nice place, and they exist in conflict with each other. Mm-hmm. So then our first plot turn is the guy explains that the bowling alley is going to get shut down. But parallel to that, I think it's like, Ernest, if you can't grow the bowling alley business, I'm going to shut it down. Cut to bad future. And we see the two guys traveling back in time and establish that, like, you know, they're in conflict and their conflict ties into the bowling alley.
Yes.
So that's our plot turn. Then those two guys show up in their separate locations and they meet with their dudes. And the evil guy, obviously, he's more overtly threatening and he kind of bullies the laser tag guy into being on his side. Whereas the good guy kind of, like, plays it off like, oh, I'm just a new hire. But he's weirdly interested in Ernest and in the bowling alley. Are we going to do the thing where this guy is a descendant of Ernest?
I like that idea. Because this is dumb, and this shouldn't be a factor, but I like the idea that this guy has to go back in time to pay for the sins of his forefathers.
Yeah. Does he get erased from time when Ernest succeeds?
No. It's like the Back to the Future thing, where like the timeline just rearranges itself, and he goes back, and everything's great now.
Okay, yeah, that's good. So we get at the very end of the movie, we see him travel back to the future. And
it's like bright and sunny, and there's definitely an old-ass Ernest who somehow lived through this timeline who's like, good job. I knew you would do it, you know what I mean?
So
that's how the movie fucking ends.
When we introduce him, he's standing at the grave of Ernest.
Dark.
I feel like we have to do that. That feels very like, you'll pay for the sins of your forefathers, God sending Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Like, we see this, like, cyberpunk, like, future Trunks. We see future Trunks, but he's wearing an Ernest hat, standing at the grave of Ernest P. Worrell the First. And then he goes back to the future, and, like, that graveyard's a park, and we see, like, old, hunched over Ernest, who's dressed exactly the same, but he has a really long white beard, and he's, like, playing with kids in the park.
Can I also put a dumb joke into this?
Sure.
His name... So, you said Ernest P. Worrell the First, so his descendant's name is Ernest, obviously. Yes, exactly.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
When he goes to apply for the job, he comes up with a worse name, and he calls himself Ernest.
Yeah. I actually, that's very funny. I think it should be less obvious, because I want to have the thing at the end, like, there be a reveal at the end where he says his name. He's like, wait, so that wasn't your real name? You're from the future? And he's like, well, what's your name? And he goes, my name's Ernest P. Worrell the Fifth.
I like that. But I also like the idea of, like, well...
No, it should still... I said it out loud, and I was like, actually, it's funnier if his name is almost Ernest, and Ernest is still surprised. And he's also treating it like it's a reveal. Yeah,
that's what I was just about to pitch. Where it's like, well, Ernest, if you want to work here with us, I guess you have to.
Okay, so yeah. Alright, so he's Ernest P. Worrell the Fifth or whatever, but his pseudonym is Ernest
D. Borrell.
Okay, yeah, sure.
No, great, our podcast is stupid again. I can't.
Yeah, no, we got dumb again. No, but I think we have to do that. Okay, so the plot point turn 1 is the event that sets your story into motion and moves you from the beginning to the midpoint. It introduces the conflict and your character's world changes. This is basically when the hero sets out on his or her journey. So we did that. The next thing is the pinch point. And this
I
is
hope
where
you're
we apply
taking
pressure.
exclusive notes, because I'm, like, not keeping up.
Okay. So what we have so far is the start of the movie. The hook is we establish the bowling alley is a good, positive place, and that the laser tag place is a bad, negative, violent place. Our plot turn 1 is we introduce that the bowling alley is going to be shut down unless Ernest can grow the business and take over the reins. But we also introduce the other element, which is that conflict determines the nature of the future, and there are two battling time travelers who are coming back to the past to ensure one or the other future takes place.
Okay.
The next thing in a 7-point plot structure would be the pinch point. Pinch point 1. This is where we apply pressure, and this is often used to introduce an antagonist. So I think this would be the first time where those two characters, future guy and laser tag guy, do something to deliberately fuck up Ernest.
Okay. So future guys turn the screws. They would... what would they do? They would...
I think Ernest should do something that's starting to help the bowling alley, and then they sabotage it.
Oh, no, I got it. They, in an effort to, like, pretend like they're helping, put all the effort of, like, Ernest and the bowling alley into this lockout event, where it's like, you get one chance, one shot, one opportunity, like Eminem, to prove the bowling alley's worth, or it'll be shut down for good. And if the lockout event doesn't go well, the community won't give a shit if the bowling alley is destroyed and shut down. But if it does go well, the community will care. But they don't think it'll go well because it's Ernest who's going to run it.
I think you're getting ahead of yourself. I think we need to build to that. Because
Okay.
the rest... So it goes... If we're following a traditional 7-point plot structure, it goes pinch point 1, midpoint, pinch point 2. I feel like that's pinch point 2.
Okay, then what's pinch point 1?
I'm saying Ernest should do something where it's like... He should come up with his first idea, execute it, and get that sabotaged. And then he has to do the lockdown. That puts more stakes on it because it's like, he's already tried and kind of failed once. And it's like, this needs to succeed.
Okay.
So, maybe he gets like an ice cream machine and they sabotage it and it shoots ice cream all over the bowling alley and he slips sliding around. Something like that, not necessarily that. What could you do to improve a bowling alley to make more people want to go to it? I have an idea now.
Go for it.
Immediately. He gets an arcade machine, and the laser tag guy and the future guy sabotage it with future technology, and it like goes on the arcade machine goes on a rampage. It starts like shooting quarters out of it and like blasting actual lasers out of the front of it. And Ernest and Ernest have to have a slapstick action sequence in the bowling alley where they fight the arcade machine, and it wrecks the bowling alley. And now it's like we don't we also have to raise funds to help fix the bowling alley.
That's good. Ruin Ernest arcade idea.
Or it's like all the money that the arcade machine raised, instead of going back into the bowling alley, they now have to spend it to pay to fix the damage caused by the arcade machine. So they're back at square one, but they have less time.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. I don't know how this would work, but I had this idea in my mind of Ernest getting stuck in an arcade machine, and then you have this pixelated Ernest for a second.
That can totally happen in this sequence.
Ernest saves him, and then just is revealed that Ernest is like, face up against the glass. But for some reason, it translates to a pixelated Ernest.
I think that's really good, and I really like that.
Cool. Make a note of that. Okay. So the first pinch point is to ruin Ernest's arcade idea.
Yes.
Cool. What we got next?
So then, midpoint is your character moves from reaction to action. I think we already established this. This is them realizing that all of the funds they've raised have been eaten up by repairs, and the clock is ticking down, and they have to do this big lockdown event in order to, or lock-in event to raise all the money and raise the, reputation of the bowling alley. And that's going to be, their final stand.
Cool. I don't know if this is too rippy-offy. A word that I just made up.
Derivative, I think, is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, derivative. I word good. Anyway, I wonder if it's the idea of Ernest having a flyer for the lock-in from the future.
Okay. Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yes.
He didn't want to do it, right? Because that happened and it failed, and that's what destroyed the bowling alley. That's why he pushes Ernest into doing the arcade stuff, and then the arcade stuff fails, and then Ernest is out of ideas and he needs to do something soon, and then Ernest sadly pulls up we could do the lock-in.
Yeah, okay, so the arcade machine is Ernest's idea. So he's, feels totally defeated when it goes wrong. We pretty much have the midpoint.
Okay.
So there's one thing that I wanted to say, to sort of going back to the beginning. So I remembered that the first place that I had seen this 7-point plot structure outlined, they also talked about this thing called the Snow Monster Prologue, which, great name. But the Snow Monster Prologue is a reference to Game of Thrones. Whereas in both the show and the book, it kind of starts with these characters that are not the main characters encountering what will eventually become the main threat of the series, which is the White Walkers, the titular snow monsters. And it's like a cold open that has sort of a little bit of action to it and a little bit of mystery that draws you in. I think the movie should start with the time travelers.
Oh yeah, 100%.
We're going back to the place, the most important place, where this all started. Then smash cut to bowling alley. Then we have what we said was going to be the introduction, with Ernest having wacky hijinks in the bowling alley.
Yes, I agree. I think the opening should be Ernest, the person who will eventually be Ernest, at the gravesite.
The man who will become Ernest.
Who would at the gravesite of Ernest the First, and he says to himself, "I'm going to fix it," and then goes back in time with his device. And then we have the dude who will eventually be the laser tag guy, who's no, you're not going to fix it. And then he's watching from a distance, and then he plans to follow or something.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
And that's how it starts. Yeah. It's a flash cut to I don't know, 2035.
Yeah, this also gets into a thing that we didn't talk about as being essential, but was something we liked, which is the wild opening of Ernest Scared Stupid, where it's set in colonial times, and Jim Varney is playing a fire and brimstone preacher that's fighting a troll.
Yeah.
Or the opening to Ernest Gets Scammed. It's the same sort of thing. So we get that. It's kind of the reverse of both of those because it takes place in the future.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we're not going to have Jim Varney playing Ernest.
No.
We need to have a different character playing Ernest. Maybe a Michael Cera type or some sort.
See, I was imagining him being more intense. More of I don't know who I would have in mind specifically. But yeah, definitely not Jim Varney.
Yeah.
So after the midpoint comes pinch point 2, where more pressure is applied, your story takes the ultimate dive. Your character is at his or her darkest moment. Here's my idea, which is that Ernest becomes too nervous.
Because the lockdown failed already.
Yeah, and he just goes to fight future guy and laser tag guy, and Ernest has to go save him, and he's all beat up.
But I think also, this is, where Ernest finds out that he was followed. And he finds out that laser tag guy is getting help from his future descendant or whatever.
Yeah, so he's getting nervous about the laser tag thing. He sees future guy creeping around next door. He goes to the laser tag arena to fight him. We can have a cool sequence inside the laser tag arena with the lights and stuff, which will look cool but also be very cheap because we could just have like it be styrofoam and like strobe lights and fluorescent paint.
Yeah. Also, I love the idea of like, oh, you can fight me, but first you have to find me in my own turf.
Yes, perfect, beautiful. Yeah. And then I think Ernest has to come in and save him. Or he just shows up back to Ernest, like, beat up, like, oh, it didn't work. And Ernest, like, nurses him back to health.
Yeah, at the food stand, where he gets constantly berated by Linda Cash.
Yeah, and it's like, now we really have to have the lock-in work, because it's like, you even just went to fight them and it didn't happen. And it's also, like, a lesson, right?
Yeah.
Like, he tried to answer violence with violence.
You can't do that, no.
The only answer is bowling. That's the ideology that this movie has for some reason.
It works. Cool. Okay. So that's pinch point 2. What's next?
Next is plot turn 2. This is where you move from the midpoint to the end, the resolution. Your character gets or realizes they have the final piece of information to achieve what they set out to do in the midpoint. So I think this is like the sequence of the lockdown.
Lock in. We keep doing this.
Lock in. We keep changing. I think I've said every possible suffix. The lock in happens. I think that we see it going well. The laser tag guy and the future guy have to try something here that gets stopped.
Well, I think like it also will get stopped not by Ernest or Ernest, but by Chuck and Bobby, or by the Linda Cash hater.
Yeah, I think like they all step up and they're like, we also care about this place, and they stop and they help Ernest stop those guys while Ernest oversees the like fun event happening. Mm-hmm. And it's about the power of friendship because you bowl with other people.
Yeah, I think like this is also like a turning point for the Linda Cash hater, where it's like she's constantly been like down on Ernest this whole time. And maybe, like, she sees, like, some evidence, or, like, maybe Ernest confides in her about what's going to happen, and, like, she, like, is like, all right, well, you know what? Ernest sucks, but I'm not going to let this bowling alley go away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then is the resolution, the climax of the story.
And then the resolution is that they're successful. The lock-in goes well. There might be a point where it looks like it wouldn't go well, but it goes well in the end. And...
Oh, dude, I just had a genius idea.
Go for it.
So the future guy and laser tag guy attack, and it seems like this is going to ruin it, but what it actually leads to is the accidental invention of, like, laser bowling.
Bowler tag.
No, but you know that thing? Like, what is that called? Like, where they turn on the black lights and in the bowling alley. Like, they come up with that, and that's the thing that puts them over the edge, because it's like, oh, they're, like, hacking the system and shutting everything down and shooting lasers. But because our secondary cast is interceding, it ends up being harmless, and everybody loves that. And then Ernest and Ernest build, like, an intentional version of that as an addition to the bowling alley.
Hell yeah, Galaxy that's great.
Bowling, right?
Galaxy bowling. Yeah, we invent Galaxy bowling.
Yeah, dude.
That's great. Cool. So let's note that, and basically it saves the day.
Yeah, and then the resolution is everything's successful. The bowling alley's doing well. The owner retires and hands the keys over to Ernest, and Ernest says his final goodbye, and we get to see a vision of the beautiful bowling future.
Okay, cool. We need a villain resolution.
Well, okay, so they get their asses kicked in plot turn 2. I think like. Oh, okay, here's what it is. So when Ernest and Ernest are building the galaxy bowling thing, Ernest extends like an olive branch to the laser tag guy, and he's like, why don't you help me with this? Like, and we can work together. And then him and Ernest come up with they come up with the galaxy bowling for the bowling place, and then Ernest helps him come up with an idea for laser tag where it's like a simulation of this fight where they have like a guy in a big costume playing like a cartoony version of the evil guy, and the kids have to work together to defeat him.
Okay, cool. I like that a lot. 2 options for the future time traveler then present themselves. The darker option of, he disappears completely because he failed. Or the lighter option of, he stays in the present and just is that evil guy that they work together against.
Well, yeah, well, he, like, works at the place. Like, that's cool. I was also thinking the idea of, like, he does disappear, and then also part of the bowling future thing is we see a good version of him in the future. Like, hanging out with Ernest and the kids.
Let's have the good version be wheeling out old Ernest. Yes, old Ernest the first.
He's like a nurse.
Yeah. And he's like, well, thank you there. I really appreciate it kindly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He's like got the scrubs on and he's pushing. Yes, that's very good. I like that.
It's very Biff.
Yeah, that's what. That's basically that was. You were like, oh, maybe stays in the past, and the whole time I was thinking, I was like, obviously we do the Biff thing.
Yeah.
But it's like there's more nobility to this version than what happens with Biff, because also we're not going to make him be an attempted rapist like Biff.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
He's just a mean guy from the future.
Yeah, so I like that a lot. And then he vanishes. He's like, no, and he's gone. But then we see him in the future, and he's a good guy, and that works out.
That sounds like a pretty enjoyable movie we just came up with.
Yeah, I fucking love it, dude.
It's bonkers, but
cool. So,
do you want to go through the essentials to make sure we got them all? Yeah,
let's do that. And then let's compile all our notes into like a readable, serviceable movie.
Sure, for sure. Okay, so obviously we already said he's gonna be wearing the hat and vest.
Can we just have like him, like every time he has to go in for his job, Chuck and Bobby, who work the shoe stand, give him like the appropriate bowling hat and vest?
Yeah, but it looks exactly the same, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But they have like Ernest comes into work and the reason, like, the way we get introduced to Chuck and Bobby in this thing is that they have to give him the shoes, but also another hat and vest that is bowling safe and appropriate, and it's the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're like, Ernest, make sure you wear your bowling vest, and they just give him the same vest.
Yeah.
And he's like, ooh, thanks, guys. That could have been a disaster.
That's really good. That's a good bit.
Yeah.
Cool.
Low status with ambition.
He is the janitor, and he wants to become a manager. Yeah.
Perfect.
Totally. Did it.
Craftsman, like I said, I think we want to have him building like silly contraptions that try to collect the pins or the bowling balls. Maybe he makes like a bowling ball cleaner that like gets the bowling ball all wet and greasy and it like shoots it off and like bounces around.
Yeah, it's definitely like a version of Ernest Slam Dunk where the ball like just flies around everywhere, but it's a bowling ball, so it's even more disastrous. And it definitely ends with it flying into the nacho machine.
Yeah. And I think this is actually a really good use of the Craftsman thing because it actually becomes part of his character arc, where at the end he builds something successful with other people's help.
Yes. So this leads to Galaxy Bowling.
I mean, folksy wisdom, I feel like there's lots of opportunity for him to do that when he's explaining his ideas for the bowling alley and his philosophy about bowling. Like, I feel like we can put our goofy idea about the Tao of bowling saving the future into Ernest's mouth. And have him pontificate about how, like, you know, we don't just we're not... I always really like the, you remember Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, where there's that bowling pin guy who says a bunch of weird bowling wisdom to Blue?
Yeah.
They just rip that off. And have Ernest talk about rolling your soul down the...
Yeah, totally. I mean, also, like, part of it will be, like, part of the introduction to Ernest's character will him be going around, and, like, he'll pass, like, the group of bowling dads who are doing their annual tournament or whatever, and, like, give them advice they definitely don't care about. Or maybe they do care about. Who knows? Definitely, like everybody in the bowling alley community kind of has an affinity for him, and they help out with the lock-in at some point. But, like, part of that is him giving the folksy wisdom to them of, like, when you're bowling, you got to turn your back straight, your eye has to be crooked, you have to look this way, your head has to be down, your foot has to be up, and all this other nonsense that, like, ends up with him just, like, turning himself into a fucking pretzel.
Yeah, and he, like, throws a bowling ball straight up in the air and it hits him on the head.
Exactly. Perfect.
Perfect. We said that in unison. So his catchphrases, like, there's lots of room for him to use his catchphrases. I mean, if we're going to have the Craftsman thing end with it hitting the nacho cheese machine, then it's like, it can spray the cheese everywhere and he can slip and fall in it and do the ew.
Well, also, he's the janitor, so we could just throw in some toilet humor as his intro.
Oh, well, we got it. You know, just as a tribute to where we've come from, he has to start his sequence cleaning the bathrooms and then move out of those into the broader bowling alley, and he's doing his monologue about how important bowling is.
Yeah, totally. Bowling brings the community together as he looks into a toilet and goes, ew.
Yes.
And
I
then,
mean,
like, his snicker that'll come in. That's fine. He'll be a stinker at some points.
no, well, we have him. We have a sequence where he's fighting a fucking arcade machine. Like he could get the upper hand on it and snicker.
Yeah. And then it turns him into pixelated Ernest.
Yeah. And then that covers the slapstick comedy. We got lots of sequences of slapstick
Oh, yeah.
comedy.
We're covered on that.
And Bowling Alley has a lot of opportunity for slapstick comedy.
Yeah, totally.
When we established the Gamera-esque thing, we were just talking about there being kids there. You know, he's like, maybe there's like two teens on their first date, and he like, you know, like does like a kiss the girl and like pushes them close together. You know,
he makes a bouquet out of a bowling pin.
Yeah. He like, there's like a children's birthday party that he helps with. There's like lots of opportunities for that there. We kind of predicated on this idea of like bowling being this community thing, which like leads directly into this idea.
Totally. And like he doesn't necessarily have like that kid sidekick, but he has like friends that are kids that probably will help with the lock-in.
Yeah. So complicated relationship with animals and machines. We have the machines thing. We don't really have an animal element here. I know I said I was going to try and work Rimshot into whatever pitch. I think Rimshot slots easily into this. It's just like he's around. It's hard because he's going to be the workplace. Like, why would Rimshot be there? But I also do think we could have, like, he's like, well, I'll have Rimshot collect the pins. And then Rimshot doesn't want to do that. But also, I feel like we don't really need that. I'm sorry to my beautiful
No,
boy,
it's okay.
Rimshot.
It's okay. I like the idea because it falls into chaos of, like, Rimshot, follows him to work one day. And he fucks everything up for Ernest because he's the Ernest of dogs.
Yeah. Chuck and Bobby give him a bowling collar.
Ooh, yeah, you know what? That does work, because part of the intro is, like, Rimshot follows Ernest to work, and everybody's upset, especially Linda Cash.
Mm-hmm.
And then he sends Rimshot home, but Rimshot will show up later, because he'll show up with the group to, like, help with the thing. Like, he won't be, like, a main character, but he'll be, like, a side.
Yeah.
Oh, no, Rimshot's here.
We'll have, like, I could never see myself fighting side by side with an elf moment, but with Linda Cash and Rimshot.
Yeah, totally.
He, like, saves her at one point, and they like have like a moment where they're like, "Okay, you're all right, buddy."
Yeah, totally. That's great. Also, like the idea of like it's complicated because, well, at one point Rimshot fucks it up for Ernest, but at another point he helps save Ernest.
Yeah, that's the classic Rimshot stuff. Okay, competent and inept we've covered.
Definitely. Cartoon violence we've definitely covered.
Yeah, I think I've pitched two different events where he gets hit with a bowling ball on the head. So yes,
Perfect.
cartoon violence.
Overly and quickly confident, kind of covered. I think a lot of that's going to be like when he finds out that the arcade machine's like broken. He's like, well, I got this, and he starts to play the game, whatever the game is, to like help beat it. And then Nerdist is like, no, you have to help beat the arcade machine, like stop it from overreacting, not play the game to beat it. He's like, no, I know what I'm doing.
And that also sort of covers easily bamboozled and distracted.
For sure, especially with like the laser tag group maybe trying to like bamboozle him into doing the lock-in to begin with.
Yeah, and also he's easily bamboozled because he meets a person that looks like him whose name is Ernest and doesn't put anything together. Yep. And also thinks that Ernest is a normal name.
There has to be a moment, like a scene of like, well, my name is Ernest, and there has to be like Ernest like filling out like a clipboard or whatever, and like he has to like look at Ernest, look at his clipboard, look at Ernest, look at the clipboard, look at Ernest, look at the clipboard, and it has to be like super elongated, and then he's like, all right, well, Ernest.
or he's like Ernest. Is that French?
I think also at some point Ernest has to like stop himself from saying one of Ernest's catchphrases.
He's like, you know what I am saying?
Yeah. That's really dumb, but I love it.
You know what I have meant? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and then he ends as like leaving. He's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes. So good.
Very cool. So fantastical element covered.
It's time travel.
Also, weirdly, Weight of Prophecy covered.
Yeah, it comes back. Can't escape it. Chaos is all over this. We've got lots of chaos in this.
So much chaos. Now, Ernest must suffer physically and emotionally, ultimately triumph. Definitely. That's kind of worked into the plot.
Mm-hmm.
Self-sacrifice. Here's a weird one.
I think when Ernest is getting beaten up by Future Guy and Laser Tag Guy, I think Ernest should put himself between them. And I also think there's room for him to also do that in the arcade machine fight.
Mm-hmm. I think also part of it is his sacrificing his name.
Wait, what do you
No,
mean?
hear me out. So the lock-in, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is like a big thing for the bowling alley. But I think part of the reason why Ernest's family has delved into failure over time in the future is because Ernest didn't want any of the lock-in failure to be attributed with the name of the guy who originally ran the bowling alley.
Mm-hmm.
So he like the reason that like one of the reasons that Ernest comes back is like because Ernest was such someone to look up to because he wouldn't let his mentor or whoever owned the bowling alley be dragged down with him.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. I can get behind that. That sounds reasonable to me. So Ernest allows his legacy to be tarnished. And that's part of why it's so emotional at the end, where it's not just that he's alive, but it's also that everybody loves him.
Yes.
Well, there's something wrong with our brains. Why are we so invested in this stupid character?
We have come a long goddamn way for this, and we deserve it, Nate.
Yeah, okay. It's also, I want you to know that, like, I was saying that, and it made me feel, like, kind of, like, emotional.
Yeah, it should. Yeah. Ernest has to hit rock bottom.
Yeah, it's a part where we talked about it. That's the reason that the lockdown has to work is because he is at the end of his rope.
But also, what I wanted to do, what I had the idea for, was him like connecting with the community of bowling, where he talks to the bowling dads and he talks to the kids and the guys on a date and what have you. And they come back later to help with the lock-in.
Mm-hmm.
They like show up with like tools and supplies and games. Like the kids bring like Risk and shit for like people to play and have a good time. The bowling dads like bring the rest of their tournament buddies and like help bring in business and shit like that.
Yeah, and they're like teaching the kids how to bowl better and stuff.
Yeah, but like before that moment, there's like a moment where like Ernest has the lock-in and like nobody comes, and it's like open for like a second, and he's like, "Well, at least we tried, Ernest. I'm sorry. This is me. This is my problem. I want to make sure that this doesn't go back to Mister." Whatever.
We will also name that character. We'll after we're done this, we'll name all the characters and then we'll coalesce everything into the final pitch.
Yes, but like it'll be like this is me. This is all my fault, and it'll be like this moment of like him like putting his head in his hands and being upset, and then the doors will open and all the people that we saw, all the side characters that we saw will come in and help get everything set up and ready to go, and they're like, oh, we put the flyers around the school. Oh, we did this, we did that, and Rimshot's here.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good to me.
Cool.
So then Hader
we have covered by Linda Cash, playing the food connoisseur, the food stand manager, who's really uptight about that stuff, but also like just wants to do a good job. And then she eventually teams up with Rimshot. They help out.
Yes. So our two character trope, we got Chuck and Bobby as the shoe cops.
Yeah, and they definitely help out later with like helping everybody get the right shoes and be safe and stuff. And they're doing their own thing off to the side a lot, measuring people's shoes. We have Bobby going around like looking at everybody's shoes, like just going from aisle to aisle, and like doing like these weird like tape ruler measurements as he goes along. And then Chuck doing like the eyes and shit.
Yeah, perfect. So
also when the nacho cheese goes everywhere, Chuck has like that facial like. Ah!
Yeah.
Because it goes over the shoes. It gets on the shoes, and Bobby freaks out.
I don't necessarily know how we would work this in, but I kind of want him to learn about the time travel so he can have like a he's polarized line, where he's like, "It's tachyons."
It's tachyon. You don't understand. Ernest is doing this to save the future.
Yeah, exactly.
As he tells the kids, and the kids are like, "All right, whatever."
Okay, great. And then
the opening credits is set to a goofy tone. This could be accomplished through either a focus on the bowling aspect or the focus on the future aspect, but you have an idea, so let's hear that idea.
This actually works because we can sort of combine them. The future aspect will purely be aesthetic, though. So, everybody on the internet loves the crazy animations that happen when you get a strike at a bowling alley. So we have those be the opening credits, like goofy CGI, like, animated bowling pins and stuff, and the credits are happening, and like it's like boom, strike, and then we see a little short animation. Maybe we even green screen in Jim Varney to like bumble around inside of the
100%. Where like the goofy cartoon bowling ball is flying towards Jim Varney, who's standing as straight as a pin, and then it's like split, and he's like, "Woo!"
Yeah, so that's my pitch for the Do you have a different idea?
No, that fucking rules. I'm down with that.
That's all of them.
Cool, we did it. So let's round this out, name the characters, and then just outline this pitch and call it a day and go home to our wife and kids. Mm-hmm. Our collective wife and kids.
Our wife and kids that we share.
Yeah, we had a big custody
fight. That one on the
fight.
fan wiki. Okay, so first, what should we name the owner? I feel like it should just be like a Mr. something. Mr.
Walton.
Mr. Walton's good. Who else? So Linda Cash's character, what should we name her?
Let's name her... It's gotta be like a food thing. So let's name her like Patricia Lemon.
Patricia Lemon is good. I like it. Patty Lemon?
Yeah, Patty Lemon. And like that's like... also goes into her character. She's a little bit sour.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Chuck and Bobby, I think should just be Chuck and Bobby.
Yeah, totally. That could be fine. We don't need to change anything about that. That works.
Laser tag guy.
It's gotta be like a mean name. Like it shouldn't be Butch, but it's gotta have like the vibe of Butch. You know what I mean?
What if it's let's look, it's got the vibe of Butch, but it's not Butch. Biff.
No.
Bert. I'm stuck on B's. Clark. Glenn. Lurk. That's not a name.
Harvey.
Harvey? Okay, Harvey could work. Marv?
Not Marv.
Because you think of Sin City immediately?
No, I thought of Home Alone.
Oh, okay. What did you say? Harvey was the one that you said before I went to Clark. Harvey's good. Harvey what? Harvey... Biffman. Laser Boy. Zap. Beam.
Ooh, no, I got it. This is dumb.
Okay, hit me with it.
Harvey Nash.
Oh my god. When you said this is dumb, I was like, well, whatever he says, the next thing I'm going to say is Nash. Like, what is what is the implication there?
Relation.
Okay, it's Harvey Nash then.
Another reason to hate Ernest.
I don't think we ever need to directly acknowledge it. No.
I mean, we don't have to get into it in the movie, but I think it's a fun Easter egg.
Yeah, if you know, and you can come up with a theory, and that'll all the like, like for generations, kids are going to be puzzling over like what is the Ernest timeline, and that's going to give them a lot of meat to work with there. Yeah,
so I like that. Harvey Nash, and then the future time travel guy, definitely last name Nash, right?
Yeah, but he needs to have like a threatening future name. His name needs to be like Slash Nash.
No, that's awful.
But something like that, right?
Let's make it
Crunch Nash.
Pierce.
Crash Nash. Pierce Nash? Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. I like that. But you don't like Crash Nash?
I mean, I do, but like also, how dumb do we want to go? You know?
Do you want to ask Wheel?
We can ask Wheel. Pierce or Crash?
All right, Wheel. You did me dirty, but now I need you to come through for me.
Yeah, come back in, Wheel. You've been here this whole time. Tell us which one you like better.
Yeah, Wheel. What is it? What's it going to be? Pierce Nash or Crash Nash? He agrees with me. It's Crash Nash.
Okay, Crash Nash. Call me Nash, son. Crash Nash.
Do we need to name any other characters?
I love it.
I think that's all of them, right?
Well, yeah, we don't get a name like the... Well, alright, we should... I keep calling them bowling dads, but there's definitely a tournament, like dads to get together on like after the weekends and like have this like bowling tournament for the community. They should have a community team name.
Yeah.
Let's call them... What should we call them?
My brain is trying to think of dad puns, or not even puns, but just like plays on dad. Or maybe they could also just have like a. I was like briefly on a bowling team, on a 2-person bowling team when I was a child. We were called the Killer Whales. Like they could just have like a team name.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of like Bears.
Yeah, Bears is good.
Very easy. The bowling Bears.
Yeah, that works for me.
Cool.
We're not going to directly acknowledge it, obviously, but there's definitely like an implication with that name, right? About these gentlemen.
Sure. Why not?
Like I'm saying, we should, if we're casting them, these got to be some thick dads.
Stop being so horny. Okay. The Bowling Bears, that's the group. Mm-hmm. And then we need a name for the town.
Oh, the town, yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter what state it's in. It's definitely in America. But, like, it needs to be, like, we need a town name.
Splitsville.
Oh, Splitsville. That's interesting. Yeah, and it has like a bad reputation to begin with, and the bowling alley fixes the reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Like no one who's married stays married in Splitsville.
Sure, dude.
Come on, you know I had to make that fucking joke.
I know. I don't blame you. Okay, sure, Splitsville. Oh, what should we name the
cool.
bowling alley? Should probably have a name.
Yeah.
Too.
Oh, we have to name the bowling alley. It's kind of sad that we didn't name the bowling alley Splitsville.
We can name the bowling alley Splitsville and name the town something else.
No, Splitsville's the town. Bowling alley needs to be something like dynamic. Because like when you do bowl, you don't want to split.
No, you want to strike.
Yeah.
Do we name it after our dear departed friend, Gold Strike Zone?
No, we do not. Get out of here.
What's the thing?
We could call it Strike Zone.
Mm-hmm. We could call it. I mean, that's pretty generic, but I mean that's fine. Strike Zone Bowling.
I mean, does it have to be anything more than generic?
No. What about the pinter of our discontent?
That's awful. I love it.
No, we can't use that.
We can't use that.
I think
that's
Strike
awful.
Zone is fine if we just call it Strike Zone.
Yeah, Strike Zone's perfect.
What's the laser tag place called?
Laser tag place needs to be called.
Like, it's with.
Ooh, you know what? No, I got it. The laser tag place is Laser Zone, right?
Okay.
The bowling place is something different, and at the end they combine to be Strike Zone.
Okay, so the
bowling place has to be like something dumb, like Strikeout.
Yeah, Strikeout's good. Yeah, so it's Strikeout Bowling, and then Laser Zone, and then they combine to be Strike Zone at the end.
Yes, that's it. We did.
And so Ernest and Harvey Nash become partners.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I think that's everything that needs to be named is named, right?
Cool. Who do we imagine playing Harvey Nash and also Crash Nash? Just out of curiosity.
Who do I imagine? Do you have any ideas?
Honestly, I was thinking that Crash Nash could be played by John Goodman.
Maybe. I don't know. I guess that could work.
Because I'm imagining like Barton Fink, John Goodman.
Yeah, I feel like John Goodman's almost too big.
We called him a big guy.
What if it's what I was imagining?
Also, there's a lot of physical comedy and a big guy sneaking around.
That's true, but I mean, I was imagining the future guy being more big. I like the thing of him being like a cartoonish, like cyberpunk dork with like his little glasses and his black leather duster. What if it's what is that guy's name? The guy who plays Casey Jones in the Ninja Turtle movies.
I don't actually think he's very well known.
No, he's not. That's what I'm going for. He seems like the level of guy that could maybe be in not necessarily in like a slightly higher budget Ernest movie. All right, what is this guy's name?
Casey Jones is played by Stephen Amell.
No,
that's Green Arrow.
That's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the guy from the '90s one.
Oh,
he is Elias Codius.
Oh, I mean, I also like the Green Arrow actor.
I guess I was trying to think about like if this was going to happen at some point while these movies were a thing. But if I also kind of like that, I like that guy's he has a strange screen presence.
Yes.
I don't think we need to narrow down a thing, but I like the idea where we're like, well, it could be either guy who's played Casey Jones.
He's good. Also, we made the joke that the guy that wakes up every day and thinks he should be the Punisher but isn't, who was eventually Crossbones in the MCU.
Oh, that guy. Frank Grillo? Is that his name?
Yeah, Frank Grillo.
Yeah, okay. I like having someone like that, and then I like kind of changing it so it's less that he's like a cyberpunk guy and more that he's like a weird, like, chauvinistic, like, survivalist dude. Mm-hmm. Like a really, like, aggro type of guy with, like, a big truck.
Yeah. Is there anybody else that we need to worry about casting stuff?
I mean, we just get some kind of old man to play Mr. Walton.
Yeah, Mr. Walton. Dick Van Dyke?
Sure, that works. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, that I like that a lot. Again, our budgets, we gotta play within the budget.
I think Dick Van Dyke works. I feel like they could have gotten him.
Yeah, Scrubs can get him. Fucking Ernest can get him. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So, we got this. We're all set. Well, listeners, here we are at the point of the final pitch. You've most likely skipped here to get rid of our big brain gooey mess of brainstorming, but this is it. We've decided on Ernest Goes Bowling as our movie. A decision that was contested, but decided, and we have come up with a treat. So, start us off, Nate. and we'll go a little bit back and forth.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, it's basically the movie that you would imagine when you hear the title Ernest Goes Bowling. Obviously, it opens in the dark cyberpunk future of the Splitsville urban conflict zone, where the world has descended into a sort of dystopian nightmare of cyberpunk ultraviolence, a la Judge Dredd and other similar works. A young man is kneeling in respect at the grave of Ernest P. Worrell I, and he decides that he is going to activate his special time travel watch and go back in time to the place where this all started. Unbeknownst to him, he is followed into the past by his enemy, the violent and unstoppable Crash Nash. This young man and Crash Nash disappear into the past, and we smash cut to, well, I think at this point we would have our opening, which would be...
We cut to our credit sequence, which would be a compilation of those like bowling cartoons that you'd see at bowling alleys, where you get a strike and the cartoon 1920s bowling ball is like there dancing, or like goes to the pins. The pin's like, oh no! But we green screen in Ernest, who sometimes is the pin, he's sometimes the ball, and he is having difficulties avoiding it, and eventually gets knocked over, and that's the opening credit sequence.
Yes, and then we cut to the actual setting of this movie, which is the strikeout bowling alley in the not peaceful, kind of crummy, small American town of Splitsville, where Ernest works as a janitor. And we established that despite, any difficulties that might be going on in the world outside, Strikeout Bowling is a peaceful place where the community comes together. Ernest lectures us on the importance of bowling. He has a slapstick sequence where he builds some wacky machines to help him clean and maintain the bowling alley. We established that Chuck and Bobby are there, and they are two fastidious shoe rental guys. Bobby in particular is obsessive about maintaining and protecting the shoes. We established Ernest Hader, who is the persnickety concession stand vendor, who we ideally will be played by Linda Cash. Her name is Patricia Lemon.
Yes, we established that Bobby trades Ernest's hat and vest in for a safe bowling hat and vest, and then Ernest goes on behind the scenes to clean out some toilets, and we get the classic, ew.
Yes, exactly. And then what we learn at the end of this sequence, after having firmly established, that the bowling alley is this wonderful, beautiful place.
Where we have, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but we are introduced to a community of characters as well. We got the bowling tournament dads, the bowling bears. We got like a cute couple that's on a date. We got a group of kids having a birthday party. There's all this like community happening, as well as next door to the bowling alley, the strikeout, we have the laser zone.
Yes, which is run by the villainous douchebag named Harvey Nash, who wants the strikeout to close down so he can expand his laser tag arena into the bowling alley. In contrast to the friendly and lovable employees and customers at Strikeout, the people who frequent the laser zone are, just your classic, like, 80s and 90s movie bully shitty kids.
Yes. And they go and pick on the birthday party, which Ernest kind of steps in, and after having a comedy routine where he shows them how to bowl properly and gets knocked on the head with a bowling ball, he then steps in to save the kid from the rude, rowdy teens and causes like a nice moment of community where he encounters his boss, who goes to tell him a secret, and we are introduced to Mr. Walton, who manages and owns the bowling alley.
He reveals that he is going to be retiring soon, and when he does, the bowling alley is going to have to shut down. Ernest pleads with him because he believes in the power of this bowling alley and he wants to take it over. And he tells Ernest that, he would rather see this place shut down than see Ernest and it drag each other down. And unless Ernest has to prove that he can not just run but expand the business before Mr. Walton retires in order to be given rights to own and operate the bowling alley.
Yes, Ernest pleads and says that he can prove that he can do this because he wants the bowling alley to be around, because he really enjoys being with the community and really thinks that it's a standard staple of Splitsville.
Yes, and then this is when our time traveler arrives. Okay, so our time traveling hero is a descendant of Ernest, as we will learn, who he has come to understand that the sort of ultimate turning point in the fate of the future is whether or not this bowling alley is successful. If it fails, then the entire world will adopt the outlook and ideology of the laser zone and will lead to the violent future that he came from. But if the bowling alley succeeds, then he can hopefully make a better and brighter future for himself. And so he's gone undercover in a very believable disguise to help Ernest save the bowling alley. And he does this by applying for a job and using the not at all conspicuous code name of Ernest.
Yes, Ernest D. Worrell.
Yes.
So Ernest applies. We have a comedy moment of Ernest almost quite figuring out that Ernest is not a name, but, doesn't. And it goes well. And then the evil, buff, very, jockey Crash Nash comes in.
I described him when I came up with the idea for him as being the leader of the mutants from Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah. So he's like Bane. He comes in and he pulls aside Harvey Nash and says that we have to ensure what you're already planning goes through because there are forces at work against us. And they team up to talk about how they're going to take down Ernest and Ernest.
Yes. And Ernest came up with their first idea to improve and expand the business of the bowling alley, which is by installing an arcade machine, which at first works very well and is bringing in a pretty good amount of money.
Yes. We have a new arcade area with a bunch of different machines that kids are bringing in. Like the teens that normally go over to laser tag are now want to play the arcade games. And they're taking away business from Laser Zone. And to get back at them, Crash Nash and Harvey Nash decide to do some wire rearranging and cause one of the arcade machines, maybe one of the ones that Ernest built himself, to go haywire.
Yes, they use their future technology, and the arcade machine comes to life and starts spewing quarters everywhere and extending wires and slapping people around and shooting lasers out of its screen and causing all kinds of a mess, lots of damage, scaring people off. And it is up to Ernest and Ernest to defeat this.
Yes, and the way that Ernest tries to defeat it is he tries to play it. And he tries to get a high score, thinking that that'll cause it to stop. The only way to defeat a machine is to beat a machine. And he goes into that mode, but the machine eats him in a very dumb slapstick way, and he becomes pixelized Ernest in the machine as Ernest just shuts it down and unplugs it. And then we cut back to the pixelized Ernest, which is just Ernest face up against the glass in the arcade machine, begging to be let out.
Yes. So they do eventually defeat the machine, and they are left with this realization that they're going to have to use all of the money they earned from setting up the arcade to pay to repair all of the damages that the haywire arcade machine caused to the bowling alley, which has set them back to square one, but now with even less time before Mr. Walton retires.
Right, and while this is happening also, in addition to the damages from the arcade, we find out that Ernest's dog, Rimshot, has followed him to work. And Chuck and Bobby have to deal with containing Rimshot, who gets into Patty Lemon's area and causes a lot of food catastrophes. She grows to hate Rimshot, and at one point, one of the arcade machine parts flies into her nacho cheese machine that she's very protective of, and gets nacho cheese everywhere and all over the bowling shoes, which causes Bobby to freak out and Chuck to look at the camera and make those eyes.
Yes. So now, with seemingly no more options left and the date of the closure of the bowling alley rapidly encroaching, Ernest pitches an idea to Ernest. He has an old dusty flyer for an event that had been held at the bowling alley in his timeline, which was an all-night lock-in sort of event. This didn't work, though. This was Ernest's big plan to fix the bowling alley, and it failed, but he doesn't really see any other options. And when he shows it to Ernest, Ernest is very enthusiastic about the idea. But as they begin to prepare for it, Ernest gets more and more nervous about whether or not this is going to work, and he ultimately decides that he is going to abandon the lofty ideals of bowling and embrace the violence of laser tag and march over to the laser zone and physically fight the Crash Nash and Harvey Nash.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately for Ernest, Crash Nash and Harvey Nash were prepared and ready. They are in their home turf, and to fight them, You have to find them in the laser tag zone. And we get a wonderful, like, kind of war montage of Ernest trying to, like, find them in the laser tag zone and constantly running into, like, dummies and, like, other props. And eventually they corner him and give him a bloody nose.
Yeah, and, Ernest, at some point, he goes to show something to Ernest. He sees he's not there, and he goes off to find him, and he finds him in the laser zone, beaten and bloody and defeated, and he carries him back to the strikeout, and this is when they, Ernest realizes that, like, it really is all down to the lock-in. There's nothing else he can do at this point. They just have to make sure that this succeeds.
Yes, so they go to the food court, and Ernest helps to patch up Ernest as they're talking in general with Chuck and Bobby and Patty Lemon to discuss how to make this lock-in work. And they talk about different ideas and what they can do. Patty Lemon, doesn't really want much to do with it, but starts to, like, you see that she, like, kind of cares, and she's, like, off to the side, like, doing her own thing, but you see she's definitely interested in listening to the plan. And as Ernest is describing different stuff they could do, we see him in some different disguises of ideas, and he definitely does his Aunt Nelda of, like, well, my son died doing this, blah, blah, blah.
They consult Ernest's other personas for advice. They meet with the Council of Ernests.
Yes. And they eventually come up with some ideas, and they get ready for the lock-in, and they put flyers up. And we cut away to Harvey and Crash, like, coming up with ideas to destroy the lock-in, because they're also secretly listening in. We get to the night of the lock-in, and no one shows up. We see that, like, it's, like, open for business, and there's, like, crickets. And, like, after, like, 30 minutes, like, no one's coming. And it's revealed that Harvey and Crash Nash ensure that the flyers didn't go anywhere.
Yes. But then when it appears as if all is lost...
And Ernest is, like, at his lowest, rock bottom.
Everybody shows up.
Yes, the teens who are on a date invite all their friends, the kids bring in all their parents, the bowling dads bring the other tournament groups that are similar to the Bowling Bears, and everybody, like, chips in to help with this. And even we see Patty Lemon working together with Rimshot to somehow add to this, and Rimshot's helping her make a bunch of food, I guess. I'm not sure. Yes. I'm not sure how that works, but we'll make that work.
Stirring or something. Yeah, he's definitely helping. But then everything seems to be going well, and in response to this, the Nashes attack.
Yes.
And they're, like, hacking into the electrical grid and turning the lights on and off, and they're shooting lasers around. And Ernest is working on making sure everything is going smoothly and, like, interacting with all the guests.
Yeah, and he's trying to eat a hot dog, and the hot dog keeps, like, falling out of the hot dog bun.
Yes. Gotta have a hot dog based sequence.
Of course.
Yeah, and so in order to keep them from totally destroying the whole lock-in thing, the secondary characters, Ernest, Chuck and Bobby, Patty Lemon, Rimshot, they all band together to defend the bowling alley from these two thugs from the laser tag place. And their attack creates, like, a really groovy atmosphere where, it's to us, the viewer, who are aware of it, we're like, this is starting to look a lot like Galaxy bowling. The best kind of bowling. And at the end, once they're totally defeated, and the lock-in has gone perfectly, and everyone loves it, and it's clear that, like, the bowling alley is going to succeed.
Yeah, the Galaxy Bowling brings in, like, a bunch of new people because everybody texts their friends about how cool it is.
Yeah. Ernest extends an olive branch, an act of mercy, to Harvey Nash. And he's like, I think Ernest should maybe not totally understand that he was trying to, like, kill him. He's like, what you did looked great. Everybody loved it. Like, let's work together and we can make this, like, a real thing.
And then Harvey Nash is like, you know what? You're right. This was actually pretty cool. And they start drawing, like, designs up for how to, like, make Galaxy Bowling a thing and include, like, the laser zone. And we see Crash Nash just start to fade. And in a villain, just disappears completely. Yes. And then we learn over time, like a montage of, like, the bowling alley being, like, built back up. We learn the names combine into becoming the Strike Zone, a wonderful community place where you can bowl and play laser tag and have a wonderful time.
But they develop a new cooperative version of laser tag where the players work together to defeat, like, a cartoonish, like, mascot suit version of Crash Nash.
Yeah, and everybody loves it, and we see the kids who are the bullies and the kids who are having the birthday party, like teaming up and like working together as a group. And even like the bowling bear dads are there and having a wonderful time playing laser tag. And then we cut to and Ernest says his goodbyes.
And he says, I've been hiding something from you, Ernest. My name isn't really Ernest. And Ernest is like, what? And he's like, my real name is Ernest P. Worrell the Fifth.
Before he returns to the future, he says, keep doing a good job. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
during the entire movie, he has a problem with like trying to not say, you know what I mean, to give away his secret identity. He says, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about? And then the end, it's like, you know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. So the very end of the movie, Ernest, who we now know is actually an Ernest, travels back to the future. That's a term I just came up with.
Don't look it up.
And we see a bright, shining, peaceful future. There's like trees growing. Like it looks all, the lighting's better. It's maybe just the same sets as the future from before, but they're better lit now.
Yeah.
And he goes to where the cemetery he was at in the beginning should be, but instead it's like a nice park. And we see for a second there's like a oh no. Oh, because we see Crash Nash, but then we camera pans down, and he's wearing scrubs, and he's pushing an old man in a wheelchair, and it's Ernest, and he looks exactly the same, except he has a really long white beard, and he pushes him up to, like, a crowd of, like, kids hanging out in the park, and Ernest starts, like, talking to him and playing with them, and Ernest the Fifth looks on from the distance, and he smiles.
Yeah. And the movie ends as Crash Nash goes to wave and say hi to Ernest and lets go of the wheelchair of Ernest, which goes flying out into the field. He goes, wah! And that ends the film.
Yeah. Perfect. And so just to, like, we did the whole thing, we outlined, like, the whole plot of the movie for you, but if you just want, like, the pure distilled version, I can give it to you right now.
Go for it.
Ernest Goes Bowling is a movie where Ernest has to work to save a beloved but struggling bowling alley, and also the fate of the future lies in the balance.
That's the plot line, and that's our movie.
And that is the perfect Ernest movie.
The perfect pitch for an Ernest movie. We did it. We have come a long way. We have suffered physically, mentally, emotionally, seen all the Ernest films, even the one film that is not even an Ernest film, but has Ernest in it for like 2 seconds. And we did it. Ernest Goes Bowling is the pinnacle, the alpha, the omega, the perfect Ernest film that will never see the light of day, but in theory would have been astounding.
But, the beautiful thing about this is that had it actually existed, it would just be one movie, right? It would just be Ernest Goes Bowling, and you could watch it. But now there are infinite versions of it, because there's a slightly different Ernest Goes Bowling in the minds of every listener. Even Josh and me, we're imagining slightly different movies. Ernest Goes Bowling belongs to everyone.
And is our gift to the world.
And you're welcome.
So is there anything else that we need to do, Nate?
I don't think so.
Well, we should maybe talk about what's next for Pitch Perfect, right?
That is true. That's true. Well, we're going to be moving into a space that is similar, but still kind of different from where we've been. Rather than looking at a character who persists entirely along a franchise, we're going to look at a single actor who has a sort of mostly consistent comedic persona that extends across most of his filmography. And I think you probably already guessed it. We are going to be talking about the films of Pauly Shore in Pitch Perfect, the podcast, not the movie, Season 2, on Distant Shores.
Yes, that's right. We've hinted at it probably throughout multiple episodes.
We might have just straight up said it.
Yeah, like a bunch. I was being generous when I said hinted at. But that will be our Season 2, so you have that to look forward to, and we hope you stick around and join us for that sure to be wonderful season where Nate again forces me to watch a movie that is very bad, where there's a character in the army. Now.
Yes. That's kind of going to be the unifying element.
Cool.
But yeah. And so, just to be clear, for the first film that we're going to watch, in the first episode of this next season, we are going to view the classic Encino Man.
Lots to look forward to there. So, that concludes this season. Thank you so much for joining us. We do this, of course, in remembrance of the famous Jim Varney, who was taken from us way too soon. We love the character of Ernest. Emphatically, like, we had a really good time doing this, and we hope that other people will get to enjoy the good Ernest movies, not the bad ones, and keep Jim Varney in our hearts. So, with that being said, thank you so much for listening. Hope you'll join us next time, and until next time, remember, there's a right and wrong in the universe, and the distinction is not hard to make. You know what I mean?
All of you, Vern. But now you gotta move, Vern.